we're friends. I said, not like we're strangers. And I don't know what made me do it, but I said, strangers in the night, exchanging glances. He said, oh, for God's sake. He said, if you're going to sing that song, at least get in key. So he goes to me, strangers in the night. I say, exchanging glances. He said, wandering in the night. I said, what were the chances? We're driving into the compound, singing that song. I get out of the car, and he gets out, and he always he say, hey, good night, Tommy. I'll see you tomorrow. So, I'd go in the bungalow, and I was thinking on the way there, if I could go back to my old neighborhood, and all the guys in the bar, when I used to tend bar, these guys, I'd say, hey, I was just riding around with Frank, and we were singing Strangers in the Night. They'd go, get the hell out of here.
Wow. What a week for this show. I'm so excited. I get to talk to a lot of people in my job. I get to interview a lot of people, but I'm pretty sure this guest this week is someone connected, first of all, someone I idolize himself, but then also someone connected to show business and the era of show business that I want to be like now. Everything that this guy's done, I am inspired by. I'm so grateful he's here. I want to do some stats just because we should do some stats. He deserves some stats. Open on the road for Frank Sinatra for 14 years. He's been on The Tonight Show over 50 times. 60?
61.
Over 60. I knew it was over 60. Damn it. Fill in for David Letterman, one of David Letterman's biggest guests back in the day. He's toured all over the country, big in Vegas, toured all over the world. Been doing stand-up comedy for
52 years.
52 years. He's helping me with the intro. Guys, I'm so grateful he's here. Put your hands together for Tom Dreesen.
Oh, what a crowd. What a crowd. Oh, my God.
Sometimes I do the clap and nobody's here. So we got a couple people. At least it felt like something. So good to see you, man.
You too, Paul.
Thank you for coming.
I'm happy to be here. This is a great layout. I like this.
Thank you. We like to make people feel as comfortable as almost like therapy a little bit. If you, this setup with the chair.
Then I should be laying on the couch instead of sitting up on the couch.
If you need to, you can.
Yeah, if I lay down there and start opening up, you're going to be writing short stories for Playboy or something.
I believe it. I believe it. What's amazing about you, obviously, I touched on in the intro, but gosh, the life you've lived and the career you've had is really, really inspirational and remarkable from your humble beginnings to what you were able to do. And I've heard you speak about it a bunch. But my first question for you is really, looking back to where you sit today, did you ever imagine this life that you foster for yourself? Because it's pretty crazy. I can't think of a more inspirational story. So for people who don't know, explain a little bit about how it all began.
Well, first of all, in answer to your first question, no, I never thought I'd ever even be in show business. It wasn't like I was a child, actor or anything like that. It was the furthest thing from my mind. I grew up, I had 8 brothers and sisters. There were 8 of us, 4 boys and 4 girls. We lived in a shack in a suburb on the south side of Chicago called Harvey, Illinois. Steel mills and factories, a blue-collar town, They had like 15 factories in the entire city, steel mills and factories. They made everything from clutch plates to crankshafts, taverns. We had 36 taverns, and my dad was well known in all 36 of them. But we had 8 kids, lived in a shack. If you had holes in your shoes, you put cardboard in it. If a window broke, you stuck a rag in it. We had no bathtub and no shower and no hot water. It wasn't during the Depression. I'm not that old, but it was just none of this do I regret. As a little boy, I started shining shoes in taverns, setting pins in bowling alleys, caddying in the summertime, all to help feed my brothers and sisters, and none of it do I regret. But at 16, I dropped out of high school because I was going, when you're a kid going to high school, everybody's wearing either driving their dad's car or wearing the nicest clothes and the latest fashions, and I had holes in my shoes and all that. So by 16, and I was a good student, but I quit school, and no one really seemed to care anyhow. And I was working in a bowling alley and running with a real tough crowd, ironically, a bunch of guys that were pretty tough guys, but we were a gang called the Jokers. Ironically,
but tough jokers, you mean?
Yeah, we had leather jackets, but one of the guys was a real good artist, and he painted the Joker from the Batman and Robin, painted his picture on the back with the Jokers. Anyhow.
Is this the Adam West Joker? Wait, what era of Batman are we talking? The cartoon?
Way back in the cartoon days, the Joker,
okay.
But now, so at 17, I went in the Navy. A judge helped me get in the Navy, and I was 17 years old. I spent 4 years in the Navy. I spent 9 months in a Marine Corps unit called NEGF, Naval Emergency Ground Defense Force. And I was maturing in the service and came out. I married one baby, another baby, another baby. Next year, I got a wife and 3 kids. I'm working construction. I'm wheeling concrete, pouring sidewalks and basements. I'm working for carpenters. I'm working for bricklayers, labor, tending bar all the time, part-time in the bar. In the wintertime, you couldn't do much construction in Chicago, so I was always working odd jobs in the winter. I was a private detective. I worked for a detective agency called Polizzi Detective Agency, but all these odd jobs. And wandering aimlessly, and then I honestly started to pray. I was saying, God, this can't be what I'm supposed to be doing. Every job I did well, but I felt unfulfilled in the job. And I'd be sitting in a bar at 2 o'clock in the morning with buddies of mine, and I'd look around and say, I don't belong here, but I didn't know where I belonged. And I honestly, Paul, began to pray. I said, God, what is it I'm supposed to be doing? Show me what I'm supposed to be doing. Anyhow, I joined a civic group called the JCs, the Junior Chamber of Commerce in those days, that worked on community problems. If there were any problems in the community, we attacked those problems. And through that, we learned leadership training. We learned how to, chair a meeting, how to conduct a meeting, how to chair a meeting, how to serve on committees, subcommittees, how to organize, but attacking the problems of the community. So you're taught leadership training at the same time. And one of the problems then as now were that our young kids were using drugs. And I wrote a drug education program teaching grade school children, 8th graders, the ills of drug abuse with humor, a concept I had, making the kids laugh, playing records and stuff like that. And then planting the seeds, once we got them relaxed, planting the seeds of the ills of drug abuse within our community. And helping me with this project was a guy named John DeBoer, a white friend of mine. He said, I'll work with you on that, Tom. I said, okay, good. Come the night that I proposed it to the JCs, a young black guy joined the chapter he graduated from Norfolk State College. E.I. DuPont recruited him in Chicago as a marketing rep. This is a long story, isn't it?
It's a podcast. I mean, we can go on forever. It's great.
But so after I proposed this, I wanted the JCs to sanction this idea I had to go into grade schools. At that time, they weren't teaching drug education at a college level or a high school level, let alone at an elementary school level. But the JCs agreed to do it. And after the meeting, this young black guy came up to me and said, I'd like to work with you on that project. I'm new. He had a sponsor with him. He said, it's my first time here at the meeting. I'd like to work with you. I said, gee, I'm sorry. I've got a guy. Again, as fate would have it, and I was praying, the next day my friend John DeBoer calls me and he said, I can't do that with you. I got a new job. I said, gee, what was that black guy's name? Oh, yeah, Tim Reed, So now Tim and I meet, we get together and talk about what we're going to do. We rehearsed the program, went into the schools. The moment we walked in that classroom, I went, oh, my God, what a blessing, because the children were black and white. They were integrated classes, and we got their attention right away, 2 young guys, and we were playing off of one another, all that. And we'd get them laughing and then, play records and stuff like that, and then go on with the program. And one day, the program became very successful. And the JCs in 50 states and in 22 foreign countries used our program as a model program through their publications on how to teach drug education at an 8th grade level. One day, a little 8th grade girl walking out of the classroom said, you guys are funny. You ought to become a comedy team. And the thought of a black-white comedy team intrigued us because no one had ever done that before. So we started thinking, writing what we thought was funny material, for like 3 or 4 months. There were no comedy clubs in America at that time, none. So we finally went to a jazz place, and when the jazz group took a break, the owner let us get up, and we bombed. We went 100 miles an hour doing it, and we rushed off the stage, and because we went so fast with our material, we just wanted to remember it. And we got the owner in a corner and said, how'd we do? What'd you think? He said, I don't know. You didn't give me a chance to laugh. You kept running through your material.
Right.
Come back tomorrow night and slow down.
Yeah.
And thus we did. It went over, and we became America's first black and white comedy team in 1969. There were no comedy clubs, and we were called Tim and Tom. Tim Reed, who later became Venus Flytrap on WKRP Cincinnati, on a show called Sister, Sister. He played the father, blah, blah, blah. Anyhow. And we stayed together 6 years, playing what they call the Chitlin Circuit, black-owned, black-operated nightclubs. The 20 Grand in Detroit, where Motown was in Detroit. All the Motown acts broke their shows in it, the 20 Grand. The High Chaparral in Chicago, the Burning Spear, the Guys and Gals Lounge, the Cotton Club, Sugar Shack in Boston, the Club Harlem in Atlantic City, New Jersey, before there was gambling in Atlantic City.
Whoa.
Before gambling. The Club Harlem, give you something interesting. In those days in America, wherever you worked a nightclub, you usually open on a Monday and close on a Saturday night. The Club Harlem was famous, been around for years, all black club that on Kentucky Avenue. And their opening night show was Saturday night, so you close the following Friday. But first show Saturday night was 10 o'clock at night. Second show was 2 o'clock in the morning. Third show was 6 a.m., the breakfast show. Waiters and waitresses and bartenders and all the night people, over 1,000 people, would come down there for the breakfast show. And all the pimps and their hoes from Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, from Newark, from Philadelphia, they'd come down. In a place would be mob.
Wow.
Opening act, Mama Lou Parks and her dancers, a big heavyset black woman with all these dancers doing all the 20s, 30s, 40s, getting the show up. Then a male singing group, then a female singing group after, and then comedy, and then it would be the OJs or the Temptations or Smokey Robinson or,
man,
and I'd be the only white guy,
Sure.
We did a lot of routines about that. The team stayed together 6 years. America wasn't ready for us, but and then the team split up and we both went our separate ways.
What I love about, there's so much to dissect with you, but the era you come from and have performed through is incredible. But I want to go back for a second about when you were praying about being a little lost. What is it? Because I think most performers relate to that feeling, specifically if you think you can be creative or make a living as an entertainer. You go through this doubt, you go through odd jobs. I've worked many odd jobs too, and I relate to that story. When the lightning bulb goes off, where you go like what is the moment? In my mind, I romanticize like a lightning bolt moment. I'm a cliche Italian. I think I'm gonna be hit by the lightning bolt in Sicily, like Al Pacino in The Godfather. I guess I was for my wife. I don't know, but I want to know, how do you know when to follow that when you're not making money, when nobody cares? It's just you that's pushing, right? And prayer. I want to know from you, like, what led you to say, was it Tim and the response with Tim that you go, we should do this more? Was there a definitive moment is my question.
The exact moment, I recall it to this day, that when we went on stage that second night, it was a Friday night, and something I had written got a laugh. And it was like one of those old B movies where the dark clouds open up and the sun bursts through. My whole being went, oh, yeah. Oh, shit. This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I want to be a stand-up comedian. The thought that you might make a living making people laugh overwhelmed me. I mean, I couldn't sleep that whole night. It was a Friday night. And I tell this story all the time. I sound like I'm getting ready to join the priesthood, but it's really untrue. But that night,
you look like you could have.
Yeah,
No, I'm just kidding. No.
I couldn't sleep the whole night. It was a Friday night. I got up the next morning. I was married. I had a wife and 3 kids. I get up the next morning, and it was a Saturday morning, and I went down to the church where I had been an altar boy, where I went to school, where I'd been an altar boy, and where I sang in the choir, and my mom sang in the choir when she was a little girl. And I remember, like it was yesterday, I went to church, and there was no mass or no service. It was an empty church. And I got down on my knees, I prayed. I said, God, now I know. I know what I want. I want to be a comedian. If you let me make my living as a stand-up comedian, I'll never ask for anything else. I'll do charities. I was making all these promises because I knew. I was so overwhelmed I couldn't sleep that night. And if I could... This is funny. I mean, I always enjoyed telling jokes behind the bar when I was in the service, making the guys laugh. I never ever thought about it as a profession. Anyhow, again, that was the moment, and I can remember that to this day, how I felt. And of course, now that was September 1969 that I went to that church, and I knelt down and I prayed. September 2019, 50 years later, I went back to that church, and I gave a sermon to the congregation on the power of prayer. And I basically told them, I said, how many of you out there, why I believe in prayer, I said, how many of you out there were ever thinking of a friend you haven't seen for a long time, and the phone rings and it's that friend? I said, how many times in your life, how many out there, I want you to raise your hand, that you had been thinking about a friend or a family member, someone you haven't seen in a long time, and you're walking down the street, and you run into them, and you say, I was just thinking about you, Paul. And Paul said, it's funny, I was thinking about you
This
too.
just happened to me today. I swear.
Well, it happened.
Crazy.
The whole congregation raised their hand. I said, if we humans can transfer thought, and obviously we can, then how much thought can a supreme being transfer to us? So that's why, I mean, it's not rocket science to me. I just really believe in that,
Wow.
And to this day, I give motivation talks, as you know, all over the world. I do it for corporate America, and I do it at colleges and universities. But I do it for comedians. I call it the joy of stand-up comedy and how to get there. But I tell these stories all the time. I tell them that, whatever the mind can see and believe it will achieve, all these, I talk about 4 subjects: perception, visualization, self-talk, and develop a sense of humor. And I elaborate on those 4 points. And I do it for comedians for free because I don't want to charge them. I want to encourage them in this wonderful profession we're in. But everything that I prayed for, all of it has happened and more.
Wow.
And way more. And way more.
Wow.
And by the way, it didn't come easy.
Right.
It didn't come easy. I slept in an abandoned car when the team split up. I was hitchhiking up and down Sunset Boulevard, sleeping in an old Nash Rambler. Not my car. It was up on blocks where the front seat came down. My wife left me 3 times. She hated me being in show business,
Wow.
and I don't blame her. She didn't marry a comedian.
Right.
She married a guy who brought a check home every Friday like her dad did.
I bet you she married a funny guy, though, before you had the title. You were still a funny guy.
Well, yeah, but I never thought,
Right,
And,
as a living.
again, behind the bar, telling jokes and all that stuff. But I never thought, But my point of that all is that the oldest cliche in religion is that the Lord helps those who help themselves. You can't just pray and stay home and wait for someone to knock on the door.
Right.
You got to go out, and you got to make it happen.
Yeah.
You got to make it happen.
That's why I said earlier, your story is so inspirational, specifically for someone like me. I'm new to stand-up comedy. I've been interviewing for so long, but I'm so inspired by, there's an inner hustle and honestly a belief in yourself, and you prayed on it, but you believed, you knew you could do something. I think we all can feel that way in a confident way. Say, hey, I know I can do this. And I have similar moments in my career where I go, I want to do more of that, But I think it's also really hard to then do life on top of all those things. You got bills. I have 2 kids. I understand where you're talking about the life stuff. I'm curious about navigating through that. You slept on cars when you first came to LA. There was no other option in your mind, right? Is that what you would say advice-wise? Is there's just no other way? Once you have that clarity, there's no other way?
In Greek mythology, they say there was this admiral, had 1,500 men on 2 ships, and they had to take an island that had 10,000 of the enemy on the island. And he launched the boats, and they got on the island, the 1,500 men, and he told them, look back. And they looked out in the water, and he had set fire to both ships. He said, now we got to win.
Wow.
And that's the way I always felt about it, but there was no turning back. There was no turning back for me because I knew, once I got that first laugh, that I knew this is what I wanted to do. I wrote a poem years later after my first appearance in Las Vegas with Sammy Davis. I'm not going to do the poem for you, but it's called The Sound of Laughter. And the opening line is, as far back as I can remember, or shortly thereafter, I love to hear the sound of laughter. Maybe someday I'll do the rest for you, but my point is that, that's I knew that's what I wanted to do. Not only that, I knew that's what I was put here to do.
Right.
I tell comedians this all the time. We should be doing a lot of funny stuff, but I'm getting very serious.
I love it. I'm all about it.
I tell comedians this all the time, that the insurance companies of America went around the world for 8 years trying to find out the 10 fears of man around the world. Death was 4th. Pain was 2nd. Getting up in front of an audience was the number 1 fear of mankind, the number 1 fear. Now, if you can get up on stage and you're a house painter or you're a construction worker or whatever, or a lawyer, and you can talk to the audience for 30 to 45 minutes about your profession, you're in less than 1% of the population of the world. If you can get up and make people laugh for 45 minutes, you're in less than 1/1,000,000th of the percentage of the population of the world.
Yeah.
I tell comedians, do you know how lucky you are? Do you know that you have this gift? Don't tarnish this gift. Don't destroy that gift with drugs and alcohol and everything can destroy that brain. This is a great gift you have, that you can make people laugh. You're in less than 1/1,000,000th of the population of the world, And laughter, that aside, we now know laughter is healing. It used to be a theory. It used to be a theory that laughter is healing, but it's not a theory anymore. We've always known that laughter is psychologically a deterrent. If the brain can't think of 2 thoughts at the same time. So if you're laughing at a comedian, you're not thinking about your problems.
Yeah.
So it's a psychological deterrent. Now because of Norman Cousins, who wrote the book Laughter Math and The Healing Heart, because of him, UCLA did research, and they found out what happens when the human body laughs, that endorphins are released from the brain into the bloodstream. That's why after a hearty laugh, you laugh so hard, tears roll down your eyes, and you go, and a sense of well-being comes over. Your body's gone through an actual chemical change. So laughter is not only psychologically a deterrent, it's physiologically therapeutic.
Wow.
So therefore, comedians are physicians of the soul. Dr. Paul.
That's amazing. I never thought of it that way. And I also really appreciate your perspective because in our generation of entertaining, it's a compare culture. And so you're reminding me, hey, there's not as many of us as it feels like, especially when you're doing this business. And everybody compares now. We go, oh, what are you doing? What is he doing? Who liked that? Who did that? That's how you can get stuck in that. When you're reminding me, I'm a doctor. I got to tell people now, I'm a doctor of laugh.
Let me tell you something else, and I tell this in my motivation talks. That they give this credit to Ernest Hemingway, but it might be a Hindu proverb too. I researched it, but I thought it was Ernest Hemingway, but it goes back and forth. But this is the greatest line of all. There is nothing noble about being superior to another human being. True nobility lies in being superior to your former self. Am I a better friend than I was last year? Am I a better father than I was last year? Am I a better husband, a better neighbor, better whatever? Am I a better comedian than I was last year? That's your only competition your whole career. The number one problem of most comedians is we compare ourselves to another comedian.
Yeah.
I say at the comedy show last week at the motivation talk, I said, I stand before you and tell you I'm a success as a stand-up comedian. I'm a success. And my critics would say, oh, no, you're not. You started out with David Letterman and Jay Leno, and Jay Leno's got 500 cars and 187 motorcycles and mansions and homes in Newport Beach Newport, Rhode Island, and David Letterman's, $1 billion or, billions of dollars and private jets and all that. I say, but I was never in competition with Jay Leno or David Letterman. I only wanted to be the best Tom Dreesen that I could be. So your only competition all your life as a comedian is, are you a better comedian than you were last year? Listen to your tapes. Watch your writing. Have you improved? Have you grown as a stand-up comedian? And the other thing to remember, you never arrive. We never arrive as stand-up comedians.
It's so true. I know.
Hey, I was working in Lake Tahoe, opening for Sammy Davis Jr. one time. George Burns was working at Caesars. He was 95 years old. He died at 100. I had done the Dean Martin roast where we roasted George.
Yep.
I knew him. I liked him. I went over to catch his show. He was 95 years old. He didn't run out to the microphone, but when he got out there, he did an hour and 10 minutes of stand-up comedy. When he got done, I went backstage to see him. He was looking at he had some 3x5 cards. And he was looking at his notes. I said, hey, George. And he looked up. He said, hi, Tom. I was working on some new material tonight. I said, that's what I want. Yep. I want to be 95 years old working on new material.
Yeah, well, it never ends. Like you said, it's the game. It's the process.
We never arrive.
Yeah. I love that. And it's so true with material, I find, you're just constantly trying to evolve and get better. And I think if you're not, you can get really stuck. I want to go back to a point about healing, because I heard you say something about the Tim and Tom days. And just going back to, that time in culture, I think is fascinating that you guys were the first and only black and white duo that really, in a way, healed racism. Like to think about that time. I heard you say a story about how kids would come up to you, a white guy would come up to every show and say, "Hey, I have a black friend who now that I saw you guys, I can call."
Well, what happened? In those years, you got to remember. You weren't born yet. In 1969, the world was in turmoil.
Yeah.
The Vietnam War was raging. Students were protesting all over America. I had just gotten out of the service. Tim just got out of college, but they were protesting all over the country. African Americans were rioting in every major city in America, including Harvey, Illinois, where I grew up at, in my neighborhood, one of the largest riots in the country. All over America, feeling disenfranchised from the system, there were riots. America was in turmoil. And here, Tim and I were going across the land trying to make people laugh. We did 11 prisons in 1 year. We did the county jail in Chicago 3 times in the same year. We did the Pontiac prison and Joliet prison and Iowa prisons. Anyhow, anywhere there was racial tension, we would go there. We didn't preach. We were just trying to make people laugh. Mm-hmm. In those days, you didn't see a black guy and a white guy walking down the street together, let alone on a stage together. You just didn't see that. So, as you pointed out, after these shows, how many times, Tim and I talk about this all the time, a young white kid would come up and say, gee, I got a black friend that I'd like to reach out to. But if I do, the white guys are going to call me names. But after watching you and Tim, I'm going to reach out to my black friend. Then a black kid would come up and say, I got a white friend. I really like the guy, but the brother's going to call me names and wear me out. But I'm going to reach out to my white friend. That means more to us, even to this day, than anything else that we could have accomplished. That wasn't what we set out to do. We just wanted to make people laugh,
I really think it's interesting, though, how your comedy career started being of service with the program you created for students. You've it's an inspirational thought to think you kind of started in a way of education and being thoughtful and of service to people. and you've been making people laugh ever since. So that's a good foundation, I think, to think of it that way. Instead of, I want to be famous, I want to be the funniest guy in the room, I want to be, no, you were just trying to make people laugh.
And I always say, I never set out to become a star, and look how good that's turned out,
Yeah.
I know it sounds like bullshit, but I never really wanted to be a star. I just wanted to be a comedian.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be a working comedian, And when I met Phyllis Diller many years ago when I was brand new, she said, Tommy, try to have a career that goes kind of like this. You don't want a
Right.
career that goes like this, because then it's only one place it goes back
So
down.
true.
She said, just a working career where you're elevating, but you're increasing and being better at your profession. And that's all I wanted to be a working comedian. And that years later that I toured with Sammy Davis Jr., I toured with with Dean Martin. I did shows with Dean Martin. I toured with Smokey Robinson, Gladys Knight and the Pips, and Natalie Cole, Frankie Avalon, my buddy James Darren. I mean, all these people, and then with Frank Sinatra, that they thought I was good enough to grace the same stage with them.
Yeah.
That's all I cared. I didn't care if ABC, NBC, CBS, or the movies. I really, honestly did not care if they liked me or didn't like me.
Yeah.
I would want them to like me, of course. But that these folks said, come, like Frank said, come fly with me.
That's insane.
Then that meant that as a stand-up comedian, I was doing my job.
Yeah. To me, that's the coolest thing ever. Truly. I've met a lot of comedians. I met a lot of people. That is the coolest comedian cred I've ever heard, that you could grace the stage with the greatest entertainers of our time. Truly, in my opinion. I idolize those guys. I idolize that era of comedy. Dean Martin's my favorite guy. I got them all over the studio. I don't know if you noticed. All your old friends are all around you here.
Yeah.
Describe what it's like for you getting those opportunities once that started happening in your career. And I know before that you worked for a long time, very hard time, through the Comedy Store, through making it in LA. But once you're a touring comic for a while and you end up starting to open for acts like that, what was that like? Like, what was that? How did that happen? And how did you maintain it for so long? You did Frank for 14 years, right? I mean,
yeah.
incredible.
What happened was, and all of it just falls into place, but what happened was when I first started doing The Tonight Show, in those days, remember, first of all, wherever you went in America, people said, what do you do for a living? You say, I'm a stand-up comedian. The next question out of their mouth was, oh, yeah? You ever been on Johnny Carson? If you hadn't been on Johnny Carson in the eyes of America, you just weren't a comedian. Mm-hmm. So, you might want to be, but you might going to be, but you weren't one now. So you would watch The Tonight Show because we're in show business. That's two words, show and business.
Yeah.
So I'd watch The Tonight Show and say, how did those guys get on there? And I noticed one thing. They had the right material. They could make grandma and grandpa, mom and dad, and the kids laugh.
Clean.
You couldn't say go to hell. You couldn't say damn. You couldn't swear. Today, all that changed when cable television came along.
Yeah.
Because then the option was yours, and rightfully so. That's why we have the First Amendment. We can say whatever we want to say. Thousands of men and women died so that we have this right. I'm going on another subject here, but thousands of men and women died so we have this First Amendment. We can say whatever we want to say. You don't have to listen to us. You can turn us off. You can walk out the door. You can ask for your money back. Mm-hmm. But that's why they died for the First Amendment. That's why I'm so down on the politically correct police, because I don't know who they are.
Right.
Who the hell are they? They're telling us what we're supposed to say. When people start tell you what you must say, next thing they're going to tell you what you must think.
Right.
And
it's wild that people think now, well, it's a whole nother subject, but it's too supported. Policing voice has become a supported thing in our culture. We go, oh, let's police that. We agree. Yeah. We'll get behind that. Let's police that. You can't say that.
Yeah.
As a comic, it's kind of, I think it's the last dying breed of free speech where we really could say what we want.
We are the last bastion.
We could get in trouble these days, but you can still say anything up there.
Yeah. We live in a society now where any disagreement is hate speech.
Yeah.
If I disagree with you, when I grew up, I'm going way off the subject. I want to get
We'll get back to Frank. Don't worry, I like this too.
Okay. But when I grew up, I had never seen intellectual combat. I grew up in a neighborhood where two guys were arguing about the Cubs and the White Sox. They went out in the alley and beat each other's brains in.
Right.
All I saw was fist fights. I boxed when I was in the service. I had my nose broke twice in a street fight, once and once in the ring. But I mean, that's all I ever saw I never saw intellectual combat. Then when I went in the service, we'd be out at sea. You could never ever fight in the service. You could never fight another shipmate or anything. You couldn't even push or shove a guy. They called that skylarking. Because aboard ship, you push a guy or get mad again, you might fall off the side of the ship or into a prop. I was on 2 aircraft carriers, So, but I would see a a black guy from Detroit and a Jewish kid from New York and an Italian kid from New Jersey and a redneck from Alabama. And I'd see them getting these debates, and I think, they're gonna throw it down now.
Yeah.
And I'd say, it's gonna. But they would go back and forth for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And pretty soon one of them would say, I never thought of it that way. You got a point. Let me think about it. I had never seen intellectual combat. Years later, I'm watching a show called The David Susskind Show. There's a man named Gore Vidal who was an extreme leftist, and then William F. Buckley Jr.,
Right.
who extreme on the right, and they would debate. They'd shake hands, they would debate, and after it was over, they'd shake hands again. It was intellectual combat.
Yeah.
That's gone out of our society now.
It's very far away, I feel like. I do think it can still exist. I'm an optimist. I think that's how we're supposed to learn from one another.
Well, if that was true, then every college campus, I've always said, where they make their mistakes, every college campus should have a liberal come and discuss what liberalism is to him or her in America. Then a conservative comes
Correct.
what conservative is to him in America.
Yeah.
And let them but they won't allow that. They won't allow free speech on those campuses.
Because they take stances as schools, basically, you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, and so you have to have security and all. I mean, it's
Yeah.
such BS. Anyhow, I'm going to go back to
You're such a professional. You got it all in your head. I like that. You go right to where we were. You've been on the Tonight Show a long time, and a lot of shows. You know what you're doing, I feel like.
Well, yeah. I mean, anyhow, let me go back to about working with all those artists. When I was watching those people on Tonight Show, I said, you got to learn to work clean. So I had to start writing material to get on that Tonight Show. Once I got on that Tonight Show, that first appearance, I got bumped 3 times.
Which happened back then a lot, right? Oh my God! How many pounds did you lose sweating backstage?
Not sweating backstage, not eating for 3 or 4 days. I went and was supposed to do the show on a Tuesday. They ran out of time. You go there, they put you in makeup. This is it. This is that moment, man. This is what everybody knows. Freddie Prinze did one appearance on the Tonight Show, and the next day got a sitcom. That's why everybody migrated out here at that time.
Yeah.
Johnny Carson moved out here in 1972, to Burbank here. And then, when Freddie Prinze, Johnny would put comedians on, but Freddie, it launched his career. After that, we all came out here.
Yeah.
David Letterman, me, Jay Leno, all the guys I was talking about. But, so now you got the call. I'm going to get the Tonight Show. Craig Tennis came to see me at the talent coordinator, saw me at the Comedy Store, and he said, come to my office. And I came to his office. He said, I saw you do 20 minutes. Show me the 5 minutes you would do if I put you on a Tonight Show. So on his desk, standing in front of his desk, I did this joke, that joke. He said, take that one joke out. Now do it. And he said, I don't think Johnny would like that or something like that. Anyhow, when I got done, he said, okay, you're on next Tuesday.
Oh, my God.
Now, I got a week. I'm telling everybody back home, I'm doing the Tonight Show. I'm doing the Tonight Show. You get there, man, a whole week of. Now, meanwhile, you're going to the Comedy Store every night working on that 5 minutes.
You have to, yeah.
So anyhow, you get there and they put you in makeup, and then they take you up to your dressing room, and then later on they bring you down to the green room because you're going on. I'm in that green room, and they came in the green room and said, we ran out of time. We want you to come back next week. So I said, oh, God. Another week goes by. I go back. I get in makeup up to my dressing room, down to the green room. We ran out of time. And third time, I go to my same thing. We ran out of time. The fourth time I'm there, I'm in the makeup room, and Fred DeCordova, the producer, came in. He said, I got bad news for you. I said, what? He said, you're going on tonight.
Oh.
Now, a lump gets in your throat. 28 million people watch that show. This is it. This is that moment. You ever heard that song, That One Moment in Time?
Yeah.
That lyric, every time I hear those songs, those lyrics, with that one moment when all of my dreams are a heartbeat away and the answers are all up to me. It's no more. It's no more he said, she said, or I could have, I would have, might have. This is that moment.
Yeah.
I'm behind that curtain. They bring me that long walk. Not from the green room. You walk that long walk. Later on, when I became a veteran, stagehands would say, hey, Dreesen, hey, how's your Cubs? How's your Cubs doing and stuff? But that first time, as you're walking back there, everybody turns their heads and they go, it's his first time. It's his first time.
Yeah.
Now you get behind that curtain. The talent coordinator said, are you okay? Say, I'm fine. He walks away and you're going, what's my first joke?
Oh, God.
So now you're, oh, my God. Now the band is playing, Doc Severson's playing, and because they're in commercial break, right? And so it's dark, and then all of a sudden the light starts coming onto the curtain, and the music dies out, and you're back live now. And Johnny Carson says, we're back now. And I'm glad you're in such a good mood tonight, because my next guest is making his first appearance on The Tonight Show. Would you welcome Tom Dreesen? Now that one line, I'm glad you're in such a good mood tonight. Johnny sets him up that he'll never do it again, but that first night. They open that curtain, you walk out, the bright lights hit you. There's a spot you hit, that little green,
I've been on. I know where the Star, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been in that studio.
You hit that
yeah.
spot, and now, no, the Star was for Johnny.
Oh, it's for Johnny. Oh, yeah, I know
Johnny,
you're
the
talking about,
little T was for you.
Yes.
But I hit that mark. Now you can't see the audience, and they're applauding everything. And I got the first joke out, and it got a laugh. Then I got the second joke out, and I got a laugh. Then the third joke, now it got a laugh. Now I'm on a roll. Here. Now I hear Johnny and Ed laughing behind me, which is really
my
good.
God.
Now I'm on a roll. I got 8 applause. And now I finished, and I said, "You've been a wonderful audience. This is my first appearance on The Tonight Show. Show business is a tough life. So if you like me, and you're Protestant, say a prayer. If you're Catholic, light a candle. If you're Jewish, somebody in your family owns a nightclub. Tell them about me." And I bolt out. I go back to the curtain. Now the coordinator comes around. He says, go back. Johnny wants you back. I said, go sit by Johnny. He says, don't go sit by Johnny. Just go back. They open up the curtain. I walk back out for a second bow. Johnny gives you that little circle that he used to do, the circle. And I never stopped working from that night.
Wow.
After that, I was doing Dinah Shore, Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas, Johnny Carson, Midnight Special, rock concert, Soul Train. I'm the only white comedian to ever do Soul Train because I have an album out in front of an all-black audience called That White Boy's Crazy. But, Hollywood Squares, $20,000 Pyramid. I was flying to Canada doing 3 and 4 shows down there. You would tape 3 or 4 while you're up there. Sammy Davis Jr. takes me on the road. He sees me and takes me on the road with him. And then singers, why I was working with all those artists, because in those days, they knew if you did The Tonight Show, you could work clean.
Right.
Well, they didn't want an act in front of them that would work blue in those days. Some of them had Smokey Robinson and Sammy. They had family audiences coming to see them, you know. And so that's why I was getting a lot of work with them, with the singers. And then, like I say, and I'm not a prude. I'm a street guy. I don't have a degree from academia. I got a doctorate from the streets.
Yeah.
I know every dirty joke there ever was. And by the way, I enjoy telling them and I enjoy hearing them.
Right.
But I couldn't, as I pointed out earlier, we're in show business.
Right.
I couldn't make any money doing that. And corporate America, you could go do a corporate date and make more money in that one corporate date than you'd work a whole month in a comedy club,
I really respect that, though, because I actually think it's harder, even more these days, to work clean. It's even harder now because it's almost more permitted to kind of be blue if you want to be blue.
Yeah.
It's hard to write clean. It's hard to perform. I try to do clean as well, and I totally get it. But, man, I can't imagine. I wanted to know what your first joke was because I was trying to find it today on YouTube for your first Tonight Show appearance. Do you remember your first joke?
It was some dumb joke. It was some, by the way, I did 61 appearances on the Tonight Show, and I don't like to look at any of them because you look at them, you go, oh, gee.
I thought you studied your work. That's how you get better. You're better comedian every year. Your tapes, yeah.
But and sometimes they'll show me those reruns of those shows. Somebody say, hey, they'll send me a tape, and I'll say, God, I can't believe I did that dumb joke.
That's just the nature of this business,
it
though.
Is, really,
you feel like because you want to know why? Because you said it earlier. You have evolved as a comedian every year, so you feel like you shed that comedy voice a little bit.
I think what happens is, Paul, in my opinion, every comedian starts out doing an impression of another comedian because they know that works. I can watch a new comedian say, oh, he likes Jerry Seinfeld or he likes Jay or whoever, Chappelle. When they're new, I'm talking about open micers or something like that. But what happens is one day you're normally doing an impression of another comedian when you're delivering your material, and then when you're brand new, and then one day you let a little bit of you out. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't get a laugh, you withdraw and go back into doing this comedian that you think was funny. You're doing an impression of that comedian with your material. Then one day you let a little bit of you out, and it gets a laugh, and then you start to let a little bit more of you out. Then you let a little more, and pretty soon you become you on stage. Yeah. And once you become you on stage, you start growing in leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
Once you're totally comfortable with who you are, it's no longer some people have a stage persona. Mm-hmm. My friend David Letterman, the guy you hang out with, he's not the same guy that goes on stage. I am the same guy you're talking right now. I'm the same guy if I was walking out right now. That's just, but that doesn't make me right or wrong. But I believe you really begin to grow when you're so comfortable in who you are on stage. And then also when you really learn the art, it's a conversation, not a presentation. Is it your act? You damn right it's your act. It's your job to make it look like it's not an act. Mm-hmm. You're just making it up as you go. You're having a conversation with this audience. Mm-hmm. That's why, because you can fool them. When you're writing a joke, comedy is one of two things. Number one, it's 9/10 surprise. The audience laughs because they didn't think you were going to say that. So the setup line has to hide the punchline. And the other rule is there are no victimless jokes. Who's the victim in this joke? Is it me? Is it you? Is it the government? The airlines? So again, when you learn all those things and you put this into an act, and then you walk out like you're saying it for the very first time, that's when you start to really evolve. When you're caught in the act. Candid Camera had the greatest line, even though it wasn't for stand-up comics, but the line was caught in the act of being yourself. That's when you start to grow as a stand-up.
That's the best thing to hear for someone who's working the scene now. And for so many comedians out there is getting to that level of confidence takes a lot of reps, takes a lot of time up there. But you're a great example of how it works because you're so authentically you now. Meeting you, I've seen your comedy for so long. I relate more like that type of comedian, someone who just gets up, this is me, this is my thing, but I'm just slowly learning to be more vulnerable and talk about my real life up there versus, hey, this is a funny observation, or it's become more my therapy now. Now that I've been married.
You just hit the key word, vulnerable.
Yeah.
Vulnerable. If you're not vulnerable, a lot of people think Frank Sinatra was this tough guy. Yeah, okay, but not in the song. He was vulnerable in the song. And he showed his guts in the song. And the same way with comics. Carl Reiner gave me the greatest advice years ago. He said, Tommy, you want to make them laugh? Show them your pain. They love to see your pain. And what are we talking about? Being vulnerable.
It's so true.
Well, the other thing, one of the things I talk about to comedians is develop a sense of humor. I cannot believe how many years I've been in show business where I met comedians who had no sense of humor. And a sense of humor, by my humble definition, is not when you have the ability to laugh at other shortcomings and misfortunes. It's when you have the ability to laugh at your own.
Yeah.
When you show the audience, look at the dumb things I do.
Yeah.
That's what a sense of humor is. An old vaudevillian many years ago, he's an old guy, came to this little room that I was working in Chicago called Lay Pub. He was an old guy and introduced himself, but he said, hey, kid, you want to be a comedian? The first 2 jokes are on you. When you walk out there, tell them 2 dumb things you did today, And I always say you can teach your children a sense of humor. You do something dumb and stupid, your kids look at you like you're God, Paul. You're the God of their universe. How in the world could they survive without you and your wife? You're the gods of their universe. But you come home and you say, wait till I tell you what I did today. I'm opening the car door and I hit myself right in the mouth with it. And the kids laugh. Your wife comes home and says, I'm in the grocery store and I went to get a can of peas and I slipped and fell and the peas fell down my hair, my dress went over my head and people were... And you share that, and the kids laugh, and you laugh. They know it's all right to make mistakes, and they'll come home and share that with you. That's what teaches laughter in the home. That's what a sense of humor is really all about.
That's beautiful. We have actually a motto in my family. We say peanut butter, which is basically like it's about a story about kids coming home with peanut butter all over them. And there's 2 types of parents. There's parents that would say, well, you did all this wrong. Is clean it up. You can never get the peanut butter like that. And there's other parents that just do it too and eat it off them and go, this is hilarious.
Yeah.
And we want to be the peanut butter parents. I never said that out loud, but that is kind of, I think, how I want to be.
Yeah, but I mean, if they laughed, I can imagine growing up in a home without laughter. Laughter is so important in a home. Humor, it's, again, like I explained earlier, I don't want to keep beating that dead horse about that, laughter is healing. It's psychologically a deterrent and physiologically therapeutic. That's a fact. That is a fact,
I do have to ask because I idolize these guys so much. Obviously, Dean and Frank and Sammy, and Johnny Carson. Actually, I mean, everyone your orbit is so many comedians' favorite guys. Truly, did being with Frank so long change you as a performer?
Yeah, because it took me to another level. I had opened for Sammy Davis Jr., and he drew 2,000, 2,500 people in theaters and around and stuff like that. And I'd sit in the wings every night and watch Sammy and learn because he was such a brilliant performer. I'd watch these guys, how they took control of the stage and all that. I wanted that stage presence that they had. But opening for Frank was unlike anything that you'd ever think of as a comedian. There's 20,000 people out there. I mean, when you work Vegas, Tahoe, and Reno, and Atlantic City, that's a different thing. You have your 2,000 people a night in the room, and you can deal with that. But when we did the big theaters and around and stuff like that, in Nassau Coliseum and places like that, 20,000 people. In Hawaii, 40,000. That's a whole different dynamic. If you were to do 20 minutes tonight, 25 minutes tonight, say at the Comedy Store in front of a couple hundred people, and now you take that same 25 minutes and you go out in front of 20,000 people, that's a whole different dynamic. And they're not in front of you, proscenium, Paul. They're all around you. So you're walking in the round. I had to really learn how to get this audience keep in mind also that he wanted you to get that audience up for him, right? And that was your job. But they came to see him.
Right.
Even though I was fortunate, I was doing Tonight shows in those days, and I was on, Mike Douglas, Dinah Shore, Merv Griffin, all these shows, and Johnny Carson, Hollywood Squares and everything. People, when I'd walk out, they'd, I know him, or I saw him, but they came to see Frank.
Yeah.
So what I would do, I realized, the theaters would go dark. Out in front, the big sign. In Vegas, he'd have my name on the marquee. In the casinos, but usually out in front it was big Sinatra is here, whatever city we're in, Omaha, Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, whatever. Now, the lights would go down low, and the orchestra was in the pit. You'd hear bump, ba da dum ba. People go, whoa, and thump, and ladies and gentlemen, whoa. Now, and the comedy star of our show, Tom Dreesen, whoa. Now you're walking to the stage, and what I do, if you're in an arena with 20,000 people, 2,000 to 3,000 may be still looking for their seats.
Yeah.
Okay? So I've got to bring their attention right here. I'm not going to go out there and do my A material, do my A jokes right from Jump Street. You walk out there, I got to bring their focus to me. I'm in the round. I'd go out there and I'd say, how about a nice round of applause for the orchestra, ladies and gentlemen? Nice round. They applaud. I'd say, how many of you people out there are in this arena for your very first time? Applaud. Notice I didn't say raise your hand. How many of you people in this arena for your very first time? Applaud. They'd applaud. I say, how many people are seeing Frank Sinatra live your very first time? They'd applaud. I say, how many of you out there aren't wearing any underwear? Applaud. Throwaway line, right? Applaud. And my point is, I talk, you react. I talk, you react. I'm bringing them into my aura. I'm going all around. I do a couple of throwaway things like that. I'd say, my first line sometimes I'd say, how many of you out, to tell the truth, were really thinking Frank Sinatra was coming out? Applaud.
Right.
And they'd applaud. I'd say, I know just how you feel. I'm a little bit disappointed myself. Now the joke's on me.
Right.
Now I've got them focused on me. Now I would always write a couple jokes about that community. Lincoln, Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska, Louisville, Kentucky, whatever. And some local stuff. I would get to the limo driver when we'd land in a private jet and ask him some questions. I'd ask the stagehands. So I'd have some formula things in my mind, a couple local jokes to get their attention.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I would go into my A material.
Wow.
But it was a totally different dynamic than anything I've ever experienced before, Because how many comedians, train in front of 20,000 people?
No, that's crazy.
Or opening for Frank, or,
Also, good material is trimmed and trimmed and trimmed. I got the opportunity to talk with Jay Leno for a bit through I work for NBC, so we did a segment together, and we got to nerd out about comedy like this, but he reminded me to always trim your material. But your material and the way you speak in front of 20,000 people for comedy has to be surefire, tight. You can't be over talky or with the way, just the space of it, right? Yeah. You have to be really tight with the way you deliver your jokes.
Well,
so
and the other thing too
it.
is, mind you, that some of the times you're delivering your joke to people behind you.
That's
when
weird.
you're in the round.
Wow.
You're not doing proscenium. So but again, it's you get them caught up in your rhythm. And there's a thing that happens, and I can't tell you how it works. If you dissect comedy, it gets boring. But let's just say, I'll give you an analogy. Say we're in front of a pond, Paul, and I throw a rock up in the air as high as I can, and it goes all the way up, and then it starts coming down, and it hits the pond, and then it ripples across the pond. I always say to comedians, pretend that's laughter. When that laughter is on its way up, you don't move on your line. I learned that as a member of a comedy team. I'd step on my partner's laugh. So when some nights when it starts to come down right here, I move on the next line. Some nights I go to here and I move. Some nights I let it hit the pond and I move on. Sometimes I let it hit the pond and go all the way across. But I don't know that before I go out. Your brain, when you've been a stand-up comedian, as you know, as long as we have, your brain picks up on that.
Yeah.
Slow down. That laugh isn't finished yet. That laugh is. You watch New Comedians, and I was one. Boom! You jumped all over your laughter. You just want to get through it and remember your stuff. But that's what really taught me was that and once you got them, man, once I had that 20,000 people caught up in my rhythm and my time, there was no describing that high. No describing that high. Where now they're roaring and you got them, and then you hit them with your biggest laugh, and good night, and you walk off. And then Frank walks on and says, how about Tommy Dreesen, ladies and gentlemen?
Oh, my God.
Tommy, come back and take another bow. Tommy, I've got that on tape and all that kinds of taking that. There he is. That's my man. I mean, again, that those guys, that Frank, Sammy, and Dean liked me enough, Smokey, all of them that liked me enough to grace the same stage with them. You can close the lid on me as a stand-up comedian.
That's incredible.
Again, that I turned down more sitcoms than most comedians get offered in a lifetime during that era, because I knew it was the end of an era, and I just wanted to stay with it till that era finished.
To your point, I mean, 20,000 people laughing to your rhythm is a little bit better maybe than being in a studio with a couple people on something you don't really want to be doing. So
I've done act, I've done motion pictures.
but
I've
at the
done
time,
acting. I did those sitcoms and stuff. You get there and there's 8 people in the ensemble and they're all looking, and Paul got 2 more laughs than I got tonight, and they're all in that kind of and the wonderful thing about being a stand-up comedian is it's you're the writer, you're the producer,
right.
You're the performer, you're the director,
yeah,
and when you walk off, you get the check.
It's all
such an independent thing. Not that some people go into stand-up comedy to it's a stepping stone to a sitcom,
right.
Or to fame, to whatever. But I just only wanted to be a stand-up comedian. Can I act? Yeah, I studied acting. I can act, and I can do dramatic acting. But I don't enjoy it as much as I do, stand-up. There's nothing greater than being a stand-up comedian.
Yeah. Also, because it's like you said, it's ever evolving, and it's always you, and you can rely on yourself, and you can rely on it always growing and changing. What I love about the arena stuff with Frank is, as a comic, you have to constantly be malleable. It's like that with every show, right? It's to this day. Every show you do, you're listening to the comic before you, right? You're doing the work, seeing what the room's like. I fell in love with that part of the game too. It's like you really have to change, and people, fans of comedy, don't really realize what goes into that until you're doing it. By the way, this show, because I'm fairly new at stand-up, I love nerding out about stand-up comedy. So don't feel like we're boring anyone. I'm like a kid in a candy shop right now. I feel like I have to pay you for this advice. I feel like you're my teacher right now in comedy.
You mean I'm not getting paid?
Oh, wait. Do we gotta? Oh, shoot. This is awkward. I gave you
Check, please.
Gave you a water, LA tap water. No. It was filtered. Don't worry. But I think what's amazing is meeting someone like you, a legend of this craft. You're telling me things that amazes me about the process. It doesn't really go away, and like you have to always evolve, right? And you've also been to the heights of the heights, the chairman of the board, these guys signing approval for you. You're still writing and doing shows all the time, though.
Oh,
at
sure.
the same time.
I now I do stand up for all around the country, but I have a one-man show now called The Man Who Made Sinatra Laugh. It's a 90-minute show where I do stand-up comedy. Yeah, in theaters, the theater goes dark. They're playing Frank's music, and the theater goes dark. And then on the screen, Dennis Farina, God rest his soul, introduces me to the audience with a film, about a 3-minute film. I come out, and I do stand-up comedy for about 30 minutes, and I segue to a bar, and on stage there's a bar with a bottle of Jack Daniels on it, which was Frank's drink of choice. You know? And I get behind the bar, and I tell a funny story behind the bar, and the audience laughs. When they're laughing, the lights go out in the theater, and on the screen, Frank is singing. It's 2:45. There's a picture of Frank is on the screen singing, "There's no one in the place except you and me." And I'm behind the bar. It's like he's singing to me. I'm behind the bar. Set him up, Joe. I got a little story, and you ought to know. Anyhow, when he gets to the chorus, make it one for my baby and one more for the road, he goes off screen, and the spotlight hits me. And now I'm in a bar, and I've come home, and the audience is in a bar with me. And I tell him the first time I heard that voice, I was 10 years old, shining shoes in a bar on the south side of Chicago in Harvey, Illinois. And then I take the audience from that little boy hearing Sinatra in the south side of Chicago to one day carrying his coffin out of a church in Beverly Hills, California. So I take him on that journey with a lot of laughs, but then some very poignant moments. I go through the Tim and Tom, my years in the military, and the Tim and Tom. While I'm telling stories, pictures are coming on the screen, authenticating the stories, as well as film of Frank and I, So I take him all the way to the funeral. And I have him laughing, and and I get him to the funeral, and I can have him in tears some nights. But then I turn right around, and I close with a very funny monologue, and have him laughing again.
Wow.
And then I toast him at the end with the Jack Daniels. I say that I wish for all of you what Frank Sinatra wished for you. The very last song that he ever sang is that the best is yet to come. Good night, everybody. And Frank is singing, "The best is yet to come," as they're leaving the theater.
Wow.
Now, one of the things why I wanted to do this show, I've always thought that a good comedian could make you laugh for an hour and a half. A great comedian could make you laugh and cry. And I've only seen two comedians do that. One was Red Skelton, and the other was Richard Pryor. I saw him do something that was so dramatic one night, and I said, man, I want to try that some night. I want to try that where I get the audience. There isn't a comedian in the world will tell you, wait a minute, when you get them going like this, hit the last one and get off. You know, but I saw Pryor take him up here and had him just, and me, I was one of them in the audience, and then he brought him way down to the depths, and then he brought him back up again. I said, wow, the audience was laughing, but I wasn't. I said, that was something, man. Who's going to risk that? And that's, you know, that's a challenge to me as a comedian. And that's why I do the one-man show, you know.
That sounds incredible. I want to see you do that show. I want to come out. Now I'm not even paying you, and now I'm trying to go to your show. I don't know if I'm getting all the perks here.
There ain't a comedian in the world that's going to tell another comedian, I want to pay you to see your show. They're going to say, hey, listen, can you get me a comp?
Yeah.
Here's not only the comp, they'll say, hey, Tom, listen, we really love your show, and we'd love to see you. And can we get 14 comps?
Yeah.
They say, 14 comps. I'd say, no, I can only get you 2. Well, we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, right. Exactly, especially here. Can you just let me in on, and I'm sure people have asked this all the time, but for how many years you toured with Frank, is there a story you could tell me about like having a glass of Jack with him, or like, I think so many people grow up listening to him and imagining doing that. And for you, the kid from Harvey, Illinois, actually doing that. I heard you tell a story about leaving on a private jet. It might be in your book, actually. You leave on a private jet and you're flying over the arena, but before people are even in their cars.
Yeah.
I mean, you live at the top of the top with the best of the best. Can you just let me in on something maybe you haven't fully elaborated on? Like, what's it like hanging with Frank Sinatra? That's what I want to know.
Well, I mean, you know, I've told hundreds of stories about that. You know, in the 14 years I toured them 45, 50 cities a year. You know, after the shows, we'd hang out. He loved to hang out. He'd like to stay up till dawn. You know, he never went to bed till the sun came up. Whether we were on the road or off the road, he was nocturnal. And so even when I stayed at his home down in Rancho Mirage, in the compound, the big compound, he would be up till the sun came up, and then he would catnap during the day. But he'd come and get me out of my bungalow sometimes. He had this great compound that had you know, all fenced in and all that stuff, but it was a main house, and there was a tennis courts and swimming pools and a room bigger than this with trains, every train that was ever made in America. He loved electric trains.
Wow.
So the wall, there were brackets along the wall with every train from all over the world. And then in the center of the room, he had this big platform where trains going from the East Coast to the West Coast. And he'd put on an engineer's hat and he'd operate, and he'd operate these trains. And then it had so many things on that compound, but also bungalows on the outer perimeter that were named after his songs. New York, New York, Tender Trap, Strangers in the Night, My Way. You know, and that's where his house guests all stayed there, you know. And me being one. He'd come and get me out of my bungalow and say, Tommy, let's take a ride, like 3:30 in the morning or something. And we'd ride till the sun came up around the desert. And you know, and it's interesting because there were nights when we got in that car, we'd ride around. I wasn't Tom Dreesen, the comedian that you see on The Tonight Show or whatever. I was a kid from Harvey, Illinois, and he was a kid from Hoboken.
Wow.
And we talked about growing up around saloons, you know, because his mom and dad owned a saloon in Hoboken, as you know, called Marty O'Brien's Bar and Grill. For those who are watching and don't know why, in those days there was so much prejudice against Italians that they fought under Irish names. You know, the largest lynchings in America, they had lynched Italians.
I know.
And
well,
a lot of people, I'm glad you know that, because a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah. Because
our people put that behind them and they moved on. You know, there were more Italian Americans fighting in World War II than any other ethnicity. You know, and the first Medal of Honor recipient was from New Jersey, named Basileone, Frank Basileone.
Yes.
You know. But anyhow, you know, so you know, Frank, that's what we'd do. We'd sit around, and Frank would talk about in the saloon. His dad and mom owned Marty O'Brien's Bar and Grill. That they had a Nickelodeon there, and that a piano roll that the sailors would put a nickel in, and it would just play some song, you know, the music, and they'd give Frank a nickel, and he'd sing. You know, he had a real high-pitched voice, he said, when he was a kid. But anyhow, so we talk about that. We talk about the neighborhood and all that stuff. And there's, I think I may have told you this story, or you may have seen me tell it, but so many profound nights. Some things I won't repeat. But I remember one night we were having such a good time, and he told me something personal, something really, really personal. And we were getting near the compound, coming back. The sun was coming up. And he said, I shouldn't have told you that. I was driving, you know. He said, I shouldn't have told you that. I said, well, you know, it's not going to go any further than this car. He said, I know, but I shouldn't have told you that. I said, well, like I said, it's not going to go any further in this car. And besides, it's not like we're strangers. I mean, we're friends. I said, not like we're strangers. And I don't know what made me do it, but I said, strangers in the night, exchanging glances. He said, oh, for God's sake. I said, if you're going to sing that song, at least get in key. So he goes to me, strangers in the night. I say, exchanging glances. He said, wandering in the night. I said, what were the chances? We're driving into the compound, singing that song. I get out of the car, and he gets out, and he always he say, hey, good night, Tommy. I'll see you tomorrow. So, I'd go in the bungalow, and I was thinking on the way there, if I could go back to my old neighborhood, and all the guys in the bar, when I used to tend bar, these guys, we would sit up, I would close the bar and be stocking the freezers and all that stuff, and they'd be playing the jukebox, and Frank would be on the guy. They were all Sinatra fans, those guys, guys from the neighborhood. Man, what would that be like, man, flying with Frank Sinatra? And they'd be talking about that. I said, if I could go back, and they were all in the bar, and I'd say, hey, I was just riding around with Frank, and we were singing Strangers in the Night. They'd go, get the hell out of here with that bullshit. Get out of here. But it happened, and it's a moment I'll never forget. It was kind of a good moment, I mean, so many other things. There's so many other stories that I could tell you what kind of guy he was. One of the reasons that I stayed with him as long as him is because he never knew how much in awe of him I was. He never knew that. I never showed that.
You played it cool.
No, you know why? I don't know what it was, Paul. I picked up on it when I first started touring with him. Maybe being years of a bartender and reading people's you get pretty good at sizing people up. But I realized he didn't want another fan. He had millions and millions of fans. Right. You know how many times I wanted to say to him, damn, man, tonight when you were doing that song or this, that, or that moment, or gee, I saw you in From Here to Eternity, and when you were doing The Manchurian Candidate. The reason I didn't do that, because then I'm another fan, and he had enough of those.
It creates a distance between you two.
Yeah, he wanted a pal.
Yeah.
And he never knew how much in awe of him I was, because he was something else. He was not a saint, but he did some saintly things.
Sure.
But he was just the greatest pop singer of all time, bar none. Charlton Heston once said, to watch Frank Sinatra sing a song is like watching a 4-minute movie. People forget what a brilliant actor Frank Sinatra was.
Yeah.
From Here to Eternity won the Academy Award. He should have won the Academy Award in The Man with the Golden Arm or The Manchurian Candidate. He did 61 films. He's a brilliant actor. So when you gave Frank Sinatra a song, to him it became a script. Yeah. What did the writer feel the night the writer took pen in hand? So he'd immerse himself in that lyric and become that lonely guy in a bar whose woman left him, and you're never going to find love again. And you felt that. And the joy of a song. Come fly with me. Let's fly away. I mean, when Frank Sinatra sang it, it's like you never he always said, that what was the writer feeling the night the writer took pen in hand? One time we were in the car, and he was telling me, he said, you ever notice that you're going through a bad love affair, a breakup, and you're in a car, and a song comes on the radio, and it reminds you of that, and you change the station. And lo and behold, another song comes on, it reminds you of that. You change the station. Then another song comes on, and all of a sudden it dawns on you, they wrote those songs when they feel like you're feeling right now, And he was head and shoulders. Steve Lawrence, who's a wonderful singer. Yeah. Great singer. Steve Lawrence said we were having dinner one night, Frank and I, and Steve was there. And Steve said to Frank, you ruined it for all the rest of us. Because once they heard you sing it, they knew how it's supposed to be sung.
Yeah, well, he was the first one, I think, who really introduced that to pop music. I feel like Bing had the mechanics of the great vocal, but Frank made it dramatic and made you feel it. I think it's my take on that.
And you're right. Again, I mean, he was so vulnerable in the song. Yeah. Go listen to a song called I'm a Fool to Want You. That he co-wrote that song. After Ava Gardner left him, he went back and re-sang that song. And he was devastated when she left him. She destroyed him. He lost weight and in those days, couldn't afford to lose weight. He lost weight for months and months and months. Oof. He was down but he went in and re-recorded that song, I'm a Fool to Want You. Pity me, I need you. Oh, man. Here's another song called If You Go Away. If you're in a bar at 3 o'clock in the morning and your woman left you and you ever hear that song, If You Go Away, before the song is over, you'll put a gun in your mouth.
You really feel it. You really feel that way.
Yeah.
Man, your stories are unbelievable. It's like I said earlier, it's so inspirational. What is today like for you? Like, how often do you? I saw you do the Laugh Factory all the time here in LA, but do you tour around the country doing stand up? I don't think you're ever going to stop doing stand up, right? Is there a certain level of comedy you hold on to now at this stage of your life?
Yeah, I mean, I just want. That's all I want to do is do stand up comedy. Last weekend I was at the Comedy Store in the main room. And the original room was where the Tonight Show discovered me 47 years ago or something like that. So I like doing that. I like the one-man show, of course. I'm a golfer, I play golf. I'm a member at Lakeside, and I play in a gambling group called the Rat Pack of all names. But it was called that way before even Frank and them.
Oh, wow.
Humphrey Bogart used to be a member at
Well, that's where he got it.
At Lakeside.
It's you guys.
Sure. Yeah.
Probably, right?
Yeah.
Started with Humphrey Bogart,
It started with Humphrey Bogart, yeah.
Well, no, wasn't it Lauren Bacall?
Norma McCall was Humphrey Bogart's wife.
That's why. She was the one who said it first, right?
Well, she called him, his group, a bunch of rat bastards.
Okay.
She said, "Oh, you rat bastards," And
there you go.
Anyhow, so I had to pick up. I didn't have much of a childhood because I was always working, helping feed my brothers and sisters. And again, none of this do I regret. Then I went in the service at age 17, 4 years in the military, come back, and I'm married and I got kids. I never had much of a childhood. When I started making it in show business, I started playing softball in a fast pitch league. Until I was 58 years old, I played left field, coming off the road. And I'll tell you a great story about almost missing a gig with Frank and me. But I played basketball in the Van Nuys League, until I was 48 years old. So I was like reliving my childhood. I was doing all these things. And now, even now, I play golf. I go hang out with my buddies when I come off the road. I just want, and I have children. I have grandchildren. Now I have 3 great-grandchildren.
Wow. God bless. That's amazing.
And for me to go, the joy of my life is I'll go to my daughter's house, and she always puts me at the end of the table like, I don't ask for that. But it's a place of respect.
Yeah.
And I look down this big, long table, and there's this family of mine that I love so much. And that I'm still here to enjoy that, And they paid dues with me. I uprooted those kids out of Illinois where they had friends in school and they had cousins, and I took them out here and took them away from all that, and they never ever once quit saying "I love you, Dad."
Oh.
I mean, so they paid dues right alongside me, So anyhow, that's I'm going all over the place with this, but to be able to have lived long enough to see all this,
yeah, it's beautiful,
and to, as you said, go through that era with all those people that I admired when I was behind the bar, not in show business, to be able to work with them and become friends with them,
It's amazing. You also, the way you look now, it makes me think you didn't smoke and drink as much with them. Maybe you did, though.
I quit smoking at age 28. Now, I used to be a smoker in a bar. That was, I realized one day how bad it was. But I drank. I was a beer drinking guy. Boy, both my parents were alcoholic at one time.
Right.
And I came from that ilk. I had that tavern mentality.
I get it.
And then when I quit drinking for years and years, and then when I was touring with Frank, I'd drink a beer once in a while. But he drank Jack and the Splash, Jack Daniels. And one of the hardest times I ever made him laugh, we were on the road doing a bunch of one-nighters all over the country, and then we pulled into Las Vegas at the Desert Inn, opened at the Desert Inn, and we did a couple shows. And that night it's 4:30 in the morning, and he's hanging out in the back, and you can see he's going in the second gear. And there's about 4 or 5 guys at the table, and I'm beat. I said, I'm going to bed. I get up from the table. He said, hey, where you going? I said, I'm going to bed. He said, what for? I said, I got to get up early in the morning, go to the cemetery and visit those guys. He said, what guys? I said, all those guys who died trying to stay with you every night, And he roared, he laughed, he said, go to bed. And he made me tell that story all the time.
That's great. That's great. Well, no, you look like you've taken care. You look young. I mean, you have all your hair, you're sharp. I think you had to have gone to bed a couple times on the road through your career.
But I try, again, because I was always athletic. I'm an athlete, but I'm not of the high caliber athlete, but I ran marathons. I ran 26 miles. My sister Darlene had multiple sclerosis.
Okay.
So I created a thing called 26 miles for Darlene, and people would pledge money for every mile I run, so every year I'd go in and run 26 miles in Chicago. I did that 3 years in a row. I used to run 10Ks. I ran with NBC. We had a relay team here. I ran 54-mile relays with NBC. We had a team that did that. I'd bring all these celebrities into Chicago to run part of the way with me. you could run a block or 2 blocks or a mile, whatever you
Cool.
wanted to run. So I brought Tony Danza and Frankie Valli and Frankie Avalon and I'm going to leave people out, Eddie Marinero and Smokey Robinson and anyhow, people from Hill Street Blues, Betty Thomas, the Chicago Cubs and the Bears would come and run.
Wow.
They'd all run part of the way. Smokey's the only one who ran all 26 miles with me.
Wow.
But anyhow, so that part I stayed in shape.
You use it, yeah, which is inspiring also to hear. It sounds like you're a guy who's always worked hard at it all. You've always kind of put your head down and worked hard. Health and career.
Yeah, but again, Christopher Morley once said, let me explain something. While I'm doing all this, they started a golf tour called the Celebrity Players Tour. It was basketball, baseball, football, hockey, tennis, and show business people that were 10 handicap or below. So it was Johnny Bench, Mike Schmidt, Mario Lemieux, John Elway, Dan Marino, Michael Jordan. We had 42 Hall of Famers. In show business, it was me, Matt Lauer, Brian Gumbel, Eddie Marinero, Smokey Robinson, Frankie Avalon, Jack Wagner, a great golfer. But I was the only comedian on that tour. Now, if you would have told me, we did 12 cities a year and they paid us. Rick Rhoden, a baseball player, won over $2 million on that tour. But if you would have told me when I was a little boy, shining shoes in those bars, not being able to play Little League Baseball because my father, was a town drunk and one of the town drunks, and I had to shine shoes in these bars. So if you'd have told me one day when I was growing up that one day you're going to get inside, first of all, Frank Sinatra's on the jukebox. One of these days you're going to go flying all over the world with Frank Sinatra and grace the same stage with him. If you'd have told me also, one day you're going to get inside of an arena and you're going to compete with the greatest athletes who ever lived in your lifetime, I'd have said, that's impossible. None of that can happen, but here it was happening for me. And Christopher Morley, the author, once said, success is living the life you want. That's all success is.
Right.
Fame is really kind of empty, Meaning in life is more important. Fame is it's kind of, it's all cracked up to be. You know what I'm saying?
It's fleeting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And it's nice, and it's nice to be famous, and people recognize your work and stuff. But service to humanity is the best work of life. It really is.
That's why I think you've lasted so long, because you have the right perspective. I've heard, I think Matthew McConaughey said something about the definition of success. Is what kind of father, it's real things, and also the work and how well you're doing the work versus the accolades or the fame or anything else. It's perspective is what you're describing, which is so important. Because you could lose it quick in this business. And everyone's head has grown bigger than the door at least once in show business. It's happened to a lot of people, I feel like. But it shrinks real fast. And
let me tell you why. You're driven by 2 energies your whole life. Your ego and your spirit. Excuse me. When I used to read all these, I've read literally hundreds of books on the powers of the mind. From Joseph Murphy, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, to Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking, Maxwell Maltz, Psycho-Cybernetics. I've read literally hundreds of books on the powers of the mind. I used to read about the yin and yang, and I didn't quite understand, what is this yin and yang thing? And as the more I kept reading, I realized that we're born pure spirit. We don't know if we're boy or girl, black or white, Jew or Gentile. We just have a spirit, and we love everything that loves us, and we gravitate to those to love. So we're born pure spirit. By the time we're about 3 or 4 years old, and well-intentioned adults, sometimes misinformed, but little boys do this, little girls do this, and they begin to program your computer. Then you begin to form an image of yourself based upon their information. Thus, the ego is formed. And the rest of your life, the ego, your spirit, is your yin and your yang. Now, keep in mind, especially in show business, ego has an insatiable appetite. It can never get enough. An ego can never get enough fame, fortune, power, money. It can't get enough. It has an insatiable appetite. And it'll lead you eventually to destruction if you don't get in control, bring a balance. Your spirit, conversely, is like the song of the Hollies in the 70s. All I need is the air that I breathe and to love you. That's your spirit. So your yin and your yang. If you're in show business because you want to show all them son of a bitches back home that they were wrong, and I'm going to have that mansions in Beverly Hills, and I'm going to have that Rolls Royce, and I'm going to drive it down the main, and I'll show them bastards they were all wrong. That's your ego, and I promise you it'll take you to destruction. Your spirit, conversely says, I love to hear the sound of their laughter. I just love making people laugh. All I need is the air that I breathe and to love you, to love your work, to love, what you're doing. So that's your yin and your yang. If you're spirit-driven, you're going to last a lot longer than if you're ego-driven. Long answer to a short.
No, Tom, I'm going to watch this footage back for decades. You're telling me everything I need to hear right now in my life and career. I think it's so inspirational to hear that. You're right. You're totally right. And it's easier, I think, in our culture now to be driven by ego because there's a lot of ways to get instant gratification for the ego, so you just feed it all the time.
Yeah.
You go, oh, look at this. Guys at home, hey, check this out. Yeah. I'm going to post this, right? I'm doing cool things. I rented this car, and I barely could afford it, but it's cool, whatever it is. It's a lease. I can't afford my payment, but whatever. It's super superficial. That's why I love what you're saying. I'm so touched by what you're saying. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
How are you feeling? I know it's a little hot in here. You doing okay?
I'm fine.
I like to check in at this point in time. Everybody okay? You want anything? Drink? you want a cigar? A boot? You don't smoke. Never mind.
No, I'm fine.
All right,
I'm fine.
Just making sure.
There's a couple hecklers in that row C. Throw them out if you need a chance.
Yeah. We actually have this cool audio thing where we silence hecklers in here, right? It's cool.
Let me tell you a quick story about heckling. I could write a book about that. Today, it's interesting because you go to the Comedy Store, you go to Laugh Factory, you're trying out new material, and their announcement, ladies and gentlemen, there's a 2-drink minimum. There'll be no heckling.
Right.
I grew up in clubs where if they couldn't heckle, they didn't come. That was part of the game, But I remember one night I was at the Improv, and I was trying out new material for the Tonight Show. I'd done about 20 Tonight Shows at that time. And it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. It's only like 17 people and, scattered. You know how they can be. But so I'm just trying to get this stuff in rhythm and get it down. And I would do a joke, and a guy in the darkness that I couldn't see because the light's in my eyes, he would do a topper and get a bigger laugh.
Oof.
And I did a joke, and he'd do a topper and get a bigger laugh. Then him and I started going back and forth, and he wasn't a bad guy. He just was a funny guy. So I finally, at some point, the audience was really now in on this. I did a joke that got a laugh. He did a joke that got a bigger laugh. And then I did one on top of that got the laugh of the night and got a big applause and everything. And I should have left this guy alone. But I had to, this is where ego stepped in. I went back to center stage and I thought about it and I stepped out of the spotlight and I said to the darkness and I said, just between you and me, I won that one. And from the darkness, he said, just between you and me, you needed it.
Oh, man.
Now, after the show's over, I go outside, I see the guy. And then I never forget, he was from Aurora, Colorado. I said, are you a comedian? No. I said, you're a comedy writer? No. I said, really? No, he said, I just like comedians. I hope I didn't offend you. I said, no, I loved it. I gave him my card. I said, write me some material. You're very, very funny. I would be interested. He never did, and I never heard from him again.
Wow.
But I mean, when I tell comedians sometimes, when you had hecklers, you got to qualify your heckler. Because somebody might blurt something out, and you say something fast back at them. Well, if the audience didn't hear that, they have no idea what you're doing. In fact, they may think you're a jerk.
Right.
Why are you picking on this poor guy? So whenever somebody says something to you, now if it's in a small room with 20 people, they heard them. But if it's in any kind of a bigger room, when I'd be in Vegas in front of 2,000 or 3,000 people, if I had some mutton head down front, first of all, don't go there unless you've got some material, and don't ditch your show for this jerk if he's a jerk,
Right.
But first of all, whatever he says, I repeat back through the microphone.
Yep.
For a couple of reasons. Number one, now I'm telling the audience. First of all, I'm qualifying. He might be saying "I love you," and I thought he said "Go to hell."
Mm-hmm.
But I go. You repeat everything he says, and you say something, and keep asking him questions till the audience now realize this is a bad guy. Now, when you nail them, they're on your side.
Right.
You nail them right away; they have no clue of that.
Right.
I had a guy at the Riviera one night. I was opening for Tony Orlando and Don. I'll never forget. And this guy was Italian. We call him Gavones, and he was sitting down in front. He had his feet up on the table like this on the stage area, and he had 2 girls with him. His gumaris.
Of course.
Yeah. So he's and it was a hot crowd. They were laughing. I was working a little stage left, stage right, and every time I got near him, the girls were laughing. He'd say, "You like this guy? This guy sucks." And I heard him, and the girls, Tony, now I'd go back and forth, and I'd go stage left, stage right. Every time I got near him, he'd say, "I can't believe you like this guy. This guy sucks." He kept saying that. Anyhow, but if I could have stopped and ditched the whole show, but I was killing the crowd. I didn't want to stop and waste it. Anyhow, but he kept saying, "This guy sucks." So finally, it's done. I said, "You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen." Stage left, I took a bow. Center stage took a bow, and I go stage right where he's at. And as I was taking a bow, I knelt down. I said, girls, you like this guy? This guy sucks. I said, good night, everybody.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant.
But I got him. But now one thing when I went out in the casino, I kept looking over my shoulder to make sure this gabon didn't come up behind me.
Yeah, I bet you probably ran out of there after that.
No, I didn't. But again, you don't ditch your whole show for some jerk down front unless you have to.
Yeah,
unless the whole audience is in on it.
It's interesting to hear that because I'm very distracted on stage because I come from interviewing. This job I did before stand-up, so I'm very comfortable bouncing off of people and improvising with people. And comedy in a way now, especially online with TikTok. I mean, people love crowd work. People are doing crowd work specific comedy now more than ever. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I followed a couple guys. Sometimes when you follow guys who do crowd work, it's not easy to follow them because I'm a traditional stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
And sometimes they offend the hell out of the audience too, or sometimes they're really good. I can't remember this guy's name. God, he's really good. I wish I could remember his name. I've never seen anybody do that great at crowd work, Although Jimmy Brogan was a good, and still is.
I see Jimmy Brogan around here.
Yeah, he goes to the Comedy Chateau.
Yeah, I see him there. Yeah.
But anyhow, by the way, I'm giving a motivation talk there June, Joey, when's the date? June 15th?
Oh, great.
June 17th.
Oh, cool.
They're having a big comedy festival there.
Awesome.
So I'm going to do my motivation talk there at the Comedy Chateau.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I'd love to come to that. I go there a lot.
Yeah. It's a Saturday afternoon. It's around
awesome.
3 o'clock in the afternoon, Joey? 5?
Cool.
3 or 4, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Awesome.
Anyhow,
I'd love to see that.
But yeah, that's a whole different animal. Somebody go on to and do 30 minutes or 40 minutes of crowd work, But whatever works for you. It's not always easy. If you would have told me when I was a brand new comedian back in 1969, 1970, I want you to go on stage tonight and you'll be the 8th comedian on, I'd say, I'm not going to follow 7 comedians.
Yeah.
No comedian in those days. We opened for singers, or a singer opened for you. When you went to Vegas in those days in the 70s, all those hotels, all the way down one side of the strip and on the other side, had singer, comedians, comedian, singer. It was a singer and a comic, and a singer and a comic. No one ever thought you're going to go on stage and follow another comedian. But then came the comedy clubs, and that's when the whole world changed.
It's funny you say that because now, depending on the club, some clubs do stack it to make more money, and you can feel it as a comedian. And I don't want to make excuses. I want to get better no matter what.
Yeah.
But I've gone on 12th, 15th, 16th, and I'm like,
yeah.
Is this material anything? I don't know. These guys are tired. The crowd is tired.
Not only is the crowd tired, but what you can talk about your wife. We've heard 10 of those.
I know,
You
exactly.
talk about your kids. We've heard 14 of those jokes.
I actually stand out in LA about my kids sometimes. A lot of the times I've done a couple of shows. I go, I got a new baby and there's crickets.
Yeah.
And I go, oh man, I just need to maybe keep work because I have a newborn right now and I have a 5-year-old too.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
I'm in the thick of that world. And
Yeah.
it's all material. It's all
Sure.
hilarious.
It's great material too.
It's great. Yeah, I'm living, so it's great. But
Well,
yeah,
if anything, the audience can identify with. I would love to see 5 real good crowd work comedians follow each other 5 in a row.
be tough.
The audience would be worn out.
Well, you go to the same place with the divorcee. You go to the same joke with the divorcee. The same comedians would probably say similar things about them. And
Well, comedy minds think alike.
Totally.
If I sat down with you and 5 other comedians and we picked up the LA Times or something and said, okay, whatever section we're in, sports section, opinion section, editorial, whatever, we'd say, okay, let's write. We'd all write, not knowing. I would bet that we'll write similar jokes on some occasions.
Totally. I'd bet yours would be better, and I also would bet I wouldn't pay you for that time. But I would love to do that sometime. I do want to go back because as we talk stand-up, and I'm someone in the craft, I'm a student of it. I do romanticize show business and the era you're talking about, but also I like a lot of people here, we romanticize the Comedy Store at the time when you showed up. I know you came up with David Letterman, Jay Leno. The time that you were at the club developing with Mitzi is a pivotal time in the craft of stand-up with Pryor. Just walk me through as much as you want, but someone coming from Harvey, Illinois, sleeping on a car, and then auditioning there and getting up there. What's the work ethic like at the time for writing and getting up? Is it crazy? Are you just obsessed with it? Are you writing every night, getting up, trying to perform there? Like, how'd you crack the Comedy Store?
First, the pressure in those days, to get on at the Comedy Store was greater than doing the Tonight Show because it was the only game in town. There was no Laugh Factory.
Yeah.
There was no improvisation here in those days.
Yeah.
And when Freddie Prinze did the first appearance on the Tonight Show and got discovered on the Tonight Show and got a sitcom the next day, the Comedy Store became. It was the energy there every night was unbelievable. It was unbelievable because every night, those shows I mentioned earlier, Johnny Carson, Mike Douglas, Merv Griffin, Dinah Shore, Midnight Special, Rock Concert, Soul Train, they were all coming there looking for comedians. Plus, they're looking for comedians on sitcoms. And so every night somebody was getting discovered. I just got the Merv Griffin show. I just got this. The energy there was. And Mitzi was brilliant in this respect. Her husband owned that club. Sammy Shore owned that club. And what he did was he bought it, and he had any comic who walked up could do an hour, 45 minutes, whatever you want. Get up anytime you want, and somebody else would get up. Mitzi streamlined and turned it into a Ford assembly line. Like 10 comics on in a row, and then a break, and another 5 or 10 comics. And each comic did 15 minutes. She was brilliant in bringing that to the fold. So, to get on. I thought when I came out here, I told my wife it wouldn't. She wanted me out of the business. And after the comedy team split up, I just got one more thing to take care of, and then I'll come back. She thought I was going to get a job and forget my dream. So when I was out here, I ended up staying here like 30 days. I was supposed to be here 7 days. I was house sitting for a friend of mine, but she had a boyfriend who was insanely jealous. So when she came back, I couldn't. She said, "You can't stay there." That's another story, But I ended up sleeping in that old Nash Rambler behind her house where I dumped the garbage all the time. And anyhow, so I'm hitchhiking every night to the Comedy Store, and you got to sign up and try to get on open mic night.
Yeah.
It took like almost a month. Finally, one night I was on, and Mitzi was in the room, and she watched me. And when I came off, she said, "Well, you've got stage presence. I've seen you've done this before, And I did some jokes about being with a comedy team, And anyhow, so she said, "We'll work you into the schedule, I said to her, "Do you ever need MCs? Because I knew that would get me more stage time, And she said, "Yeah, sure. You want?" And so anyhow, I worked my way into the system. Now, when I get into the system, now I'm going on at 1 o'clock in the morning, like everybody else, on a Tuesday night. But you work your way into finally getting into prime time, like 8:30, 9 o'clock on weeknights. But then you're on the weekends, 1 o'clock in the morning, and then you work your way in. And pretty soon I was one of the stars at the Comedy Store, And that's when I got the Tonight Show to come and see me. But the pressure was enormous because if Mitzi didn't like you, it's back home.
Yeah.
It's back to New Jersey, pal, and back to Harvey, Illinois.
Wow.
Because there was no place to go after that,
Wow. I love hearing these moments about your career where you just have to show up. You just have to do what you're meant to do. It's fateful in a way, and it's otherworldly, I think, too, right? When you have these opportunities, you either nail it or you don't, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Because I can relate in certain things I've been able to do and people I've talked to in the field, and it's for all fields. I love that quote. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity, and that's what you're describing. That's why it's like be prepared, be ready, be confident, do your thing. It's kind of scary thinking one person at the time would make or break your career, but that's you were able to be liked by the right person there.
It's all a rolling of dice, but it's also not giving up. It's not letting anybody tell you that you don't belong here. You're gonna once you burn those ships behind you, like I mentioned earlier, there's only one way to go. And Bertrand Russell once said there are people in show business who become major stars simply because they didn't have sense enough to quit when they should have. And that's my story, and that's your story. That's all of our story. We don't give up. Especially if you really believe this is where you belong.
Yeah.
In the business. The hardest part for me at the Comedy Store was now I start doing real good. Now I'm on the road. I'm touring with Sammy Davis Jr. I'm making money. I'm making six figures. Bought my wife and kids. I got my wife to come back out here with the kids. We got a home, the pool, the dog, the whole nine yards. I'm doing real good. And I come off the road one night, and at the Comedy Store, we always worked the main room. The original room, I'm sorry. When Mitzi bought the rest of that Comedy Store, she bought it from a guy named Art LeBeau. She extended the comedy. There was a big room in there where Buddy Rich performed with his band. It was 400-seater.
It was Was it Ciro's? What was it called?
Prior to Mitzi, it was Ciro's.
Ciro's,
Prior
yeah.
to Comedy Store.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a big, famous nightclub where all the Martin and Lewis and
Yeah, Dean Martin. I know the history there is amazing.
all the stars. Yeah, and then when they brought the Comedy Store, they only had one section of it. The little room where we worked, the original room, which is about 110 seats or something. Then in the main room, when Mitzi bought that, she would get like Rodney Dangerfield, he got the door. Or she'd get Jackie Mason, he got the door. In other words, if they charged $20 at the door, that's what they made. Mitzi got the drinks and the food. So the comedian got the door, whatever he wanted to charge,
right.
or she wanted to charge. So it was stars were coming. Now I come off the road one time. I'm doing the Tonight Show. Go out there working with Sammy, and I'm going to do the Tonight Show. I got to work on some new material. I go in. I signed up for the time. I go in. I walk in. They said, "Oh, Tom, you're not here. You're in the main room." I said, "The main room? I'm in the main room." Wow. I go in the main room, and it's 5 comedians: David Letterman, Elaine Boozler, Robin Williams, Tom Dreesen, Jay Leno. Now, and place is packed. After the show's over, we all go to Cantor's where we hung out.
Oh, I love that place.
Yeah. Jay comes in. He said, "Hey, this is bullshit." He said, "It maybe took 5 of us to fill that room, but we filled that room." She said, "The other guys, they get the door. We get nothing, because the Comedy Store paid nothing in those days, So I'm making money. I'm listening. Everybody's arguing and talking about it, And now it doesn't matter to me. So now they decide they're going to have a meeting, and I go to the meeting. And it's the most disorganized. You get 100 comedians in one room. They're all talking. And Gallagher saying, "Burn the place down, hang her." They were making no sense whatsoever. It was out of control. The only thing they decided was have another meeting. I go to the second meeting about 4 days later, and it's out of control again. And I have the JC background. I get up and I say, "Let me conduct the meeting. And I start. I knew Robert's Rules of Order. How to form, second emotion, form emotion. Anyhow, I got them organized. Once you got them organized, they were a force to be reckoned with. These kids all came out of universities all around the country, and they were really smart kids. Anyhow, got them organized, and then they decided that, we kept having meetings, and they decided they wanted to be paid. They thought that the cover charge was to cover the cost of entertainment. We found out later on that wasn't the origin of that, but nonetheless, they if you're charging, Mitzi was charging $5 at the door at that time, that they felt they should be paid. I'm being the spokesman. I'm already doing good. And Mitzi's proud of me because Mitzi and I were friends at that time. And I go to and I said, "The comedians want to be paid." "Oh, no, under no circumstances will I pay them." And I kept saying, "Mitzi would think about it." And I kept talking and talking. And I kept taking her message back to the comedians and back and forth. And she just simply was not going to pay the comedians. And one night, I scared the hell out of my wife. I'm laying there. I jumped up. I said, "I got it." And she was sleeping. She said, "What's wrong?" I said, I got it. I couldn't sleep the rest of the night. I get up in the morning. I go to Mitzi's office. I'm waiting for her. I said, "Mitzi, you're charging $5 at the door. Charge $6. Let the comedians have that $1. If 200 people show up, they split $200 for the night. If that's the answer. I got it." She said, "No, they don't deserve to be paid." I said, "Mitzi, you pay the waiters, you pay the waitresses, you pay the bartender, you pay the guy who cleans the toilets, the valet parker. The comedians, no, they don't deserve. This is like a college. It's Anyhow, I kept taking it back to the comedians. Finally, they decided they want to go on strike. Now, the last thing I want to do is I got $50,000 worth of work on about 6 dates with Sammy, and that I'm supposed to go on the road with. I don't want to go on a strike.
Right.
I'm trying to talk her into this. I'm going back and forth. One night, Paul Mooney, me, Tim Thomerson, and George Miller went and spent 6 hours with Mitzi. After 6 hours, those 3 guys were out cold, and it was just me and Mitzi sitting at the bar explaining, going over this fight. She just simply did not feel that it was right to pay the comedians. And finally, the comedians vote to go on strike. I call Sammy, and ever since I was a kid, that I don't want to fight, but if I'm going to get in a fight, then I want to win. And when I boxed, when I was in the service, the same way. I wasn't the toughest guy, but when they rang the bell, then I wanted to win, and you had to fucking kill me. You had to kill me because I wasn't going to give up.
Yeah.
I was that way as an athlete. I'm a little guy, so I was always playing harder than the other guys or trying. So anyhow, now, Sammy said, "I understand what you're doing. Stay there and win the fight." He was on our side. Anyhow, it turned into 8 weeks. As you know, it's in a book called "I'm Dying Up Here." a guy named Bill Needleseder wrote a wonderful book called "I'm Dying Up Here," and it's really tells the true story of that strike in that era and what happened. And it finally, after 8 weeks, long story short, we finally won, and the strike was over, and then one of the comedians couldn't get back on, and we had it in the contract when the strike was over, you couldn't retaliate against anybody walking the picket line. But a kid named Steve Lebetkin called in for times 4 weeks in a row, couldn't get back on. He felt that he wasn't ever going to get back on, and he jumped off the top of the Continental Hyatt House.
Oh, God, yeah, I
toward
remember
the
this.
Comedy Store. And he wrote a suicide note, "My name is Steve Lebetkin. I used to work at the Comedy Store."
Oof.
And that crushed me, and I didn't go back for 40-something years,
Oh, really?
I never went back. Because the last thing I said to Steve was, Steve, he was saying to me, "Tom, don't leave the group. I had to go back on the road once the strike was over."
Yeah.
He said, "If you leave the group, she'll retaliate." I said, "No, it's in the contract, Steve." And finally, he was so distraught. I grabbed him by the shoulders. I said, Steve, I shook him. I said, "I'm not going to go back till you go back. That's my word to you. I won't go back till you go back." I'm at Lake Tahoe opening for Sammy. The phone rings. It's 15 minutes before I'm going on. Jay Leno thought it was when I came off. Jay's calling me. He thought I was already off. He calls me. He said, "Steve Lebetkin just committed suicide." I had to go on stage at night. But I didn't go back for years. And then they were doing a Comedy Store special. And Mike Binder, who was directing it, said, "Tom, come on back." And Peter Shore, her son, called me too and said, "I'd like to have you come back." I said, "Okay." So they filmed me going back to the Comedy Store.
Yeah, I saw that. You're great in that.
Yeah, that was fun. But it's over. It's all past. But it's been an interesting career.
It's cool that you're there. You're back performing there now, and I think that's part of the magic of that place too. Is so many greats like you before have been through those walls, and for comedians like us now, we walk in there. There's a special feeling that doesn't go away, and so much history. I do think it's also haunted a little bit, but that just might just be because
everybody says that they think Steve is still there, and
in a way.
Yeah. That's the mystique of it. You know what? What's interesting? There's not a picture of me in the Comedy Store anywhere. They used to have a big picture of me. You know the big pictures of all the people? They had a big picture of me, but after the strike, they took it down.
Really? Who replaced you? You mad at a comic who's in your place there?
No, there's
no one there.
No, I don't know where. She put up. A lot of the comics came after me,
Yeah.
And they put up, which is okay. But I think about I'm so much a part of that history of that.
Totally,
club,
totally. You're still on the wall there though.
Yeah.
Your signature's on the wall.
Yeah.
Were comedians then like the Jay Lenos and Lettermans of the world? I know you're friends with these guys. I know you're still friends with Dave Letterman to this day. Were comedians were they friendly or competitive? Because there's two types of comics I think that you cross paths with. This is my observation from doing it for a little bit. I want to get ahead of you. I'm gonna grin. I say grin fuck. I don't really want to curse either, but they basically grin fuck you is what I say.
It's a good word.
Yeah, I like using that. That's like a showbiz thing though. Like they'll be cool, but they're competitive and they're not kind. And then there's guys who want to write with you, hang out with you, talk comedy with you. Was it that way then too with those guys?
Yeah, I think we were far more friendly to one another, and we wanted each other to succeed. I think we had more camaraderie in those days. I think that we really did. If I was watching Jay work, or Jay was watching me work, or Letterman would watch me work, and they'd say, you know that bit you're doing about so and so, you should tag it with this, or I would do that to them. I think we had a little more camaraderie. I've always thought 85% of all the stand-up comedians that I've met in my life are insecure, sometimes neurotic, sometimes psychotic, loved, starved wrecks, total wrecks. And the other 15% are gifted, confident people who say, I know how to write a joke and I know how to tell a joke. I like to think I'm in the latter, but never trust somebody that tells you they're sane. But think about what the profession, you're going to go out night after night after night after night in front of a group of strangers, and you're essentially saying, I want you to like me.
Yeah.
I want you to like me. Those comics who walk out and act like, I don't care if you like, I'll tell you, you're all, I think that's bullshit. You want them to like you.
We need it.
Yeah.
I love that. I MC quite a bit because I want to get stage time and work on it. And so the soul crushing nature of you opening a show, from doing how many times you've opened different shows, but I'm learning so much because you're cold with a group of strangers. I'm cold.
Yeah.
How can I get them on my side? How can I get them to like me? I get them to laugh.
Yeah.
And is my material going to work? Like, it's really been fun. It's just the past few years I've fallen in love with this. Like, I've been a TV host longer, and I've also hidden behind it. But my dream is stand up like yours. My dream is to do this and do it well, and get real funny up there. And it's talking to you is just reminding me of that's possible. You remind so many guys like me and so many people out there that your dreams are possible if you do the work and you really think on it, pray on it, and make it happen. I mean, that's really, I think, your story is it can happen.
Okay. Then that will bring me back to one of my motivation talk: perception, visualization, self-talk, and develop a sense of humor. When it comes to visualization, whatever the mind can see and believe it will achieve was written thousands of years ago. It's biblical in nature. The book that really helped change my life was The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy, who had taught me how to whatever the mind can see and believe it will achieve. You know, this is the vehicle that you've been given in life, Paul. This is your vehicle. How can I shorten this? But this is the vehicle. The pilot who flies the 747 every day from LAX, from Los Angeles to Boston, doesn't drive 100 miles an hour out to the airport, drive out to the, go through the gates, drive out to the aircraft, slam on the brakes, run aboard the aircraft, take off down the runway and say, now where am I going? Mm-hmm. He files a flight plan, or she files a flight plan. This is your vehicle. You need to file a flight plan. Whatever the mind can see and believe, it will achieve. Okay, I read this book by Joseph Murphy. He said that the subconscious mind is two parts of the mind, the conscious and the subconscious mind. The conscious mind has all the thoughts in here and the blocks and the negatives and the positives. Subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between truth or fiction. It only knows what you program into it. Whatever the mind can see and believe, it will achieve. You'll say, what was his name? Doggone it, what was his name? What was his name? You just sent a picture back to your subconscious mind. What was his name? 2 days later, you're at Starbucks, and just give me a cup of coffee. Tom Dreesen. Where did that come from? Once you gave the subconscious mind the picture and the emotion, it sends those billions of cells into action so they find the solution to the problem. Whatever the mind can see and believe, it will achieve. When I read that book, and it said, just before you go to sleep at night, when you first wake up in the morning, is when you envision this in your mind, your end result. Because when you're hypnotized, what they do is they put your conscious mind to rest. Mm-hmm. They put that to sleep. And once your conscious mind is at rest, your subconscious mind is open to suggestion. So, you know, when you put that conscious mind to rest, then they say, hop like a rabbit, and you hop like a rabbit. So when you're going to bed at night, your conscious mind is most at rest just before you go to, so your subconscious mind is open to suggestion. And when you first wake up in the morning. So I would see and feel and believe. See the stage you want to be on. See the award you want to win. See what you see, feel, and believe with all your heart. You know, keep seeing that, and your subconscious mind says, now I know where you want me to go. You just filed a flight plan.
Wow.
Now, I'm going to give you a couple of stories, and I could give you 20 of them. When I was sleeping in the abandoned car, hitchhiking to the Comedy Store every night, begging to work for free at the Comedy Store. I couldn't even get on at the Comedy Store. Every night, I would see myself sitting next to Johnny Carson and him saying, you're a funny guy, Tom Dreesen. You're a funny guy, Tom Dreesen. Knowing that if I was sitting next to Johnny, I'd already succeeded over there, because in those days, you had to do 3 or 4 shots before Johnny called you over to sit down. When you did your first appearance on The Tonight Show to America, you had arrived. To my industry, you hadn't arrived until you sat down and talked to Johnny.
Correct, yeah.
So I would see myself talking to Johnny, saying, you're a funny guy, Tom Dreesen. I would see it, I'd feel it, and I'd believe it. I'd see it, I'd feel it, and I'd believe it. Now, that being said, I do that in the morning, I do it at night. When I give my motivation talks, I hold up a picture of Johnny Carson laughing at me. And I show this to him. I said, this is the picture I imaged in my mind when I was sleeping in the abandoned car.
Wow.
Nothing can become a reality unless it's thought first. You see this microphone? You see these coasters? All these, were thoughts before they became realities. The same thing applies to where you want to go in life. Say you say to me, well, I don't know where I want to go. I don't know, but I want to be something. Well, envision then your mom or your dad or your buddy or your brother or somebody saying, Paul, I see you finally found success. You found the work that you love. Congratulations, Paul. See that, feel that, and believe that. Nothing can become a reality unless it's thought first. How powerful are the thoughts? When I was a little boy, selling newspapers on the corner in Harvey, Illinois, I was 10 years old. Cars were coming from everywhere one day, blowing horns, and thousands of people were coming out. And I asked one of the elders, what's going on? They said, Tom, it's Lubadro Day. I said, Lubadro? They said, Lubadro is from Harvey, Illinois, Tom. He took the high school basketball team down to the state championship 3 years in a row. He then went on to University of Illinois. Very successful athlete, went on to play for the Cleveland Indians. At age 24, played shortstop, hit .368, and managed the Cleveland Indians at age 24. He hit .368, only struck out 8 times that year. They won the pennant and the World Series. Lou Boudreau from Harvey, Illinois. The whole town came out. I was so excited. Oh my God, I sold all my newspapers. I ran down to the Elks Club on the corner of 155th Street. That's where I sold my newspapers. The post office was there and the Elks Club. Lou Boudreau came out after having lunch. The crowd cheered and applauded him. He got in the convertible. People were waving. He went down to the high school where he signed autographs. And I walked home that day. And I was a little boy. I was 10 years old. I said, wow, somebody from Harvey, Illinois is famous. Wow, somebody from Harvey, Illinois. And like little boys do, I began to fantasize. Maybe one day I'll be famous. And I pictured the band playing in the parade and all that. August 22nd, 1992, I went back to Harvey, Illinois, and that corner that I sold newspapers on 55th Street, the whole town came out with the band and everything. They named that street Tom Dreesen Street, and the guy who introduced me to the crowd was Lou Boudreau. Now,
whoa.
It sounds like psychic hocus pocus, but it's not. It's the power of the subconscious mind. You know, a lot of people go, ooh, but when I realized that whatever the mind can see and believe will achieve, it's more than just wanting it. It's, now you let your subconscious mind know you filed a flight plan. That's where you want to go.
That's amazing.
I've done that time and time again. I could give you more examples, but those are two.
That's incredible. And it's a great reminder for all of us in any lane we find ourselves in to file the flight plan.
Read that book, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. When I give motivation talk, sometimes I say, before this motivation talk is over, I'm going to tell you the secret. I'm going to tell you the secret. And after I get through telling them about, the perception, visualization, self-talk, the most important person you'll ever talk to is yourself. And I give them all that stuff. At the end, I say, and now here's the secret. The secret is you. You're the secret. You are far more powerful than you have any idea you are. You, as a human being, are far more powerful. If you can control your thoughts, you can control your feelings. What a gigantic concept.
Yeah.
Paul, you ever been in a car, you're driving along, you're in a good mood, you're in a good mood. All of a sudden, you're in a sad mood. You go, the hell? I was just in a good mood. Oh, I thought about that fight I had with my wife or with my buddy. That one thought changed the chemistry of your body.
Completely right.
Then one thought can change the chemistry of your body the other way. You can control your thoughts. You're not going to stop all the negative thoughts from coming in. They're swirling in the universe. You don't have to let them grow. I always give the analogy in the talks. I'll say, say you're going to plant flowers in a garden, and you plant these flowers, and I have on the screen it'll show flowers. I say, but then what if weeds grow? Would you let the weeds grow? You would dig up the weeds and replant flowers. Positive thoughts are flowers. Negative thoughts will enter your mind, but you don't have to water them. They're flying in the universe. They don't have to nest in your hair. You don't have to water them. I take a glass of water like this, and I'll pour dirt in it. I'll say, someone drink this. You won't drink it. I said, you won't ingest filth in this part of your body. Why would you ingest filth in this part of your body? Negative thoughts are dirt. They will come into the universe, but you don't have to let them grow. Chase them out of your mind and replace it with a positive thought. You take control. You are far more powerful than you ever dreamed you are. You really are. This is your universe. This is your vehicle.
It's amazing, and it's also a reminder it's a practice for every individual to practice that. And you could fall into thinking of like, oh, woe is me, this thing happened. Oh, the victim thinking, where it's like, oh, I'm a product of this. I'm a product of that. You're a prime example of no matter where you come from, what relationships you're in, whatever is going on, you can take the wheel.
Here's the thing that's about victim. I say you're a victor. You're not a victim. In my nightclub act, I sometimes do this, but I do it in my motivation talk. I say, first of all, I'll say a little boy goes in the backyard. All of life is about perception. A little boy goes in the backyard. He said, I'm the greatest hitter in the world. And he throws a ball up in the air and he swings and he misses. He said, I'm the greatest hitter in the world. He throws it up the second time. He swings and he misses. He said, I am the greatest hitter in the world. He throws it up the third time, and he swings and he misses. He said, I'm the greatest pitcher in the world. Nothing changed but his perception.
Yeah.
All how you perceive life. Now, the other thing, too, is I go back to my neighborhood. The whole town is black now, Harvey, Illinois. The high school, all black. And I go back and I talk to the students. And I try to tell them all the time, you're not a victim, you're a victor. If you're a victim, if you think of yourself as a victim, then succeeding in life is going to be very difficult because it's so safe and wonderful to be a victim. It's not my fault. Every time I fall short, I don't have to learn anything from that because you see, I'm a victim. And victims don't have to succeed because they're going to be held back. So if you think like a victim, then you're not a victor, but you are a victor. And I tell them, and I do this in nightclub back sometimes too. A kid said to me at a college, I was giving a motivation talk. I said, how long should you live with your parents? And he said, I think till we're 50 or 60. I said, really? And how many kids, I said, how many believe that? Some of them raised their hand. I said, why do you say that? He said, because, Mr. Dreesen, we didn't ask to be here. I said, I don't want to give you a biology lesson, but when your mom and dad made love, from your dad came 5 million seeds. Did you know that? 2.5 million died instantly. The other millions died along the way. And soon, there was only 100,000 seeds left. Then there was 50,000. Then there was 10,000 seeds left. Pretty soon, there was only like 100 seeds left. And then there was 10 seeds left. Wait, there were 5 seeds left. 4, 3, 2, 1, you. You. Don't ever tell me you didn't ask to be here. Bullshit. You fought to be here.
You swam for it.
5 million to 1.
Yeah.
You were born a victor. You were born a winner. And you got to believe that because it's true. I'm not giving you a bunch of bullshit to try to get you to think better of yourself. I'm giving you some facts.
Yeah.
You were 5 million to 1 that you wouldn't be here, but you're here now and you were born a victor. Don't let anybody tell you you're nothing but a victor.
Wow, man, I can't. I want to speak to you for the next 3 hours, but I'm going to let you leave because you really should be charging me if you give me more lessons on life.
This is gonna be a. I'm going to give you 2 things you don't have to use them. One of them, I see if I can remember these things. One of them is the first time I appeared in Las Vegas, as I told you earlier, was Sammy Davis Jr. And I was so overwhelmed that I finally made it to Las Vegas, and my name was on the marquee with Sammy Davis Jr. But I went back to my dressing room one night, and I wrote this down. It's called The Sound of Laughter. As far back as I can remember, or shortly thereafter, I love to hear the sound of laughter. Whether grown-ups or children, it really didn't matter to me. If I can make people laugh, I was as happy as I can be. You see, when you make people laugh, they get such a lift. My mom once told me, this is a God-given gift. She said, because you'll get so much love, and yet you're still able to give. I knew that I wanted to do this for as long as I live. So I left my home in Harvey, Illinois, to tour around the country and spread some joy. Success was ahead. I just didn't know how far. Soon, I was broke and sleeping in a car. But I worked, and I prayed, and I planned, and I dreamed. There were times I was alone, or so it seemed. I begged for jobs everywhere I could, and I bombed a lot of times. But I started getting good. They laughed one night in Boston, I'm proud to say, and soon they were laughing out in L.A. Now, if you were a comedian in those days and you wanted America to know, then you had to get a spot on the Johnny Carson show. Well, that happened one night, and what a break for me. Soon my name was on Caesar's Palace marquee. Well, God's been with me now, and I've gone pretty far. Who knows, maybe one day I'll become a big star. But if I don't, it won't matter at all. Believe me when I tell you, I had a ball. So now I wish for everyone what's happened to me, to find the work that you love, because that's really the key. So when I die and go to the hereafter, I'll miss all of you, my friends, but most of all, I'll miss the sound of your laughter.
Oh, my God. That was beautiful.
I wrote that.
Wow.
And then I'll give you one more.
Thank you for doing that here. That was incredible. Wow.
Save that because I may want to see it myself one time. But I'll tell you one other thing that I wrote. This is something about community. But he sat inside his dressing room feeling 10 feet tall. He could still hear their laughter echoing through the hall. Many long years of struggle, nights inside the car, had all been worth this moment. For tonight he was a star. Suddenly an old man walked in, 80 years old of a day. He said, sorry, son, I thought you'd gone. I'll clean up if I may. The young man said, go ahead, right ahead, sir. I won't be very long. He said, hey, I bet in your time many funny men have come and gone. Am I as good as those before? He heard himself exclaim, surprised that he had asked that, but compelled to just the same. The old man smiled as if he knew the hardships of the game. He said, yes, son, I seen them all and the way they handle fame. Now, you got more than most I've seen, but if you really care to hear, come back out on stage with me and let me have your ear. You see those empty seats out there that held your many fans and that picture of your family and friends that's on your makeup stand? Well, when the sweet applause has had its day and you are left alone, the truest fans you knew back then will still be there at home. He said, wow, thank you, old man. And what was your name? You've given me more than my fortune and fame. He said, my name is Old Freddie. I wish you the best because I know you're ready. Next night, he could hardly wait for the second show to end so he could talk to the cleaning man, see the cleaning man and talk with him again. And as the owner passed his door, he paused to say goodnight. He asked the comedian why he's sticking around. Is everything all right? He said, I'm waiting for old Freddie. I talked with him last night. He gave me some great advice, the kind I know is right. The owner said, but son, old Freddie ain't been here for years. He came here when this place was built. He even died right here. He said, thank you, old man. And what was your name? You've given me more than my fortune and fame.
Wow. Wow, that is beautiful.
Now, that's it. I ain't giving you.
Now get the hell out of here. Tom, I'm so touched. That is incredible, man. Wow. Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for coming in here and really dropping the amount of wisdom you just dropped. I mean it when I tell you it feels like a lightning bolt moment for me to be able to chat with you this way and hear these stories and learn from you. Thank you so much for the time. Really, it means the world to me.
Well, I was glad to do it, and yeah, I'm glad to do it. And you, Paul, you'll do the same, and you probably have already done the same. You know, it's paying it forward. Nothing, any knowledge I have was given to me, and it's. You can't keep it. You must pass it on. That's why it was given to you.
Yeah.
You have to pay it forward, and I know you'll do that. You know.
If you guys want to hear more stories and then some, you got to check out Tom's book just to make sure it's still standing. My Journey from Streets and Saloons to the Stage and Sinatra. Check this out right here. It's on Amazon. Make sure you pick up the book. This is incredible. I've started it. I really love it.
It's got 450 5-star reviews. I'm really happy about that.
There you go.
450 5-star reviews. Yeah, and they're now doing a documentary. We're doing a documentary from the book.
This is unbelievable. I'm floored by this. I'm floored by you being here. It's been so special.
Oh, thank you.
I don't even know how to end it. I got to end it now. Are you sweating? Are you sweating in my garage a little bit?
It is. I looked at the thermometer over there. It says 114 degrees.
Yeah.
It's a little bit warm.
I said it was like therapy earlier. This is part of the social experiment here. We sweat him out. We see how much more. Tell me more secrets as you sweat through. No, Tom, thank you so much for being here. Guys, thank you for watching. What a special episode. We'll be back next week. Good night, everybody.